I shouldn't even have to say, oh, we don't agree with anything. I'm sick of saying that. But anyways, I don't agree with anything with anyone but anyone. So I'm gonna stop fucking saying that and being stupid. But like right away, I was just so impressed with your organization. And one thing, being a world championship fighter, I noticed little details, patterns. These are the tales you have to read. And just we hung out all day with like 20 people, and the way they respected you, you can't fake that. So I'm like, this guy's really built something good. So just I'm glad you're finally getting a little respect. So congratulations. First off, just thanks for coming back. And how have you been? And then we can get into the event you just did.
Yes, well, it's been wonderful. We had a very tough time in the lead up to the action. If people were following the news leading up to the July 4th celebrations in Washington, you'll know that the permits were expanding for the fireworks show and the Great American State Fair, and there was the National Independence Day Parade, and there was all these other events going on. And contrary to some people's popular belief, getting less popular by the day, I actually don't want to mess with government-sponsored and permitted events. I don't want to, cause chaos and things. So, we were really hounding the news, and we had to rescout and replan the action several times, actually, in order to find out where we could safely march and how early we could go. And then the forecasts start coming in, and it was the highest temperature march we've ever done. So there were a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges, but I mean, a lot of the guys that we've been working with now, and this was by far Patriot Front's largest action. The next
There was a
largest we would
lot
have
of
done
people there.
was Kansas City last year for Memorial Day, and I think we had over 100, maybe 150 men more than that.
Wow.
And you should have been there at the gates for the metro. I'm standing there, I'm helping guys get through their cards and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of country guys who don't ride the train very often, and they just keep coming, and they just keep coming, and I'm standing there, and it's all inspiring. Because this is my life's work. This is something that I've worked so hard, and seeing it arrayed in such a large scale like that is very sobering. It's very humbling, like I said in my after action speech. And like you said, these guys respect me. They have faith in me, and I by no means discount that. And I'm getting the same feeling that I think a lot of people did when they see our action. They see the scale of the demonstration, and a lot of people wonder, what's the point of a demonstration? You can't get that many men together without passion and
Yes.
conviction and a belief in something greater. That's what it means. That's the message. But it was wonderful, and it was the culmination of not just 9 years of organizing, in my entire adult
Yes, you
life.
did not pop out of nowhere. You've
No,
been doing
but
this for 9 years. Someone made a
yes,
compilation showing you through the years, which is good. Oh,
yeah.
Patriot Front just popped out of nowhere. Yeah, you've been doing
We
this
did. We
9 years.
we just
And
spontaneously we actually live on trains, and we just spontaneously pop out of the ground like potatoes. It's amazing. But I mean, it was the culmination of 9 years of my life, and also just so many hours of preparation and planning and replanning, going back and forth, and moving the wake up. We had to wake up very early to get everything prepared. I think I woke up at 3 a.m. that day. Other guys woke up at 4. Some woke up at 4:30 if they were late. But it was a huge day, and I couldn't be happier with the outcome. I think it was great. Some of the opposition didn't even know we were in town until the speech was already done and we were on our way back. So it was huge, and seeing the aftermath, seeing the publicity has been very inspiring. And my pre-Independence Day workload I thought was big. My post-Independence Day workload, between all the new members, all the energy, all the guys are just
I bet
really
you have a lot
fired
of
up
memberships
across
now.
the country. So
Yeah,
great
just
things are in
fired
store.
up. Everyone's hitting me up trying to get your contact now when no one would talk to you before.
Give it to
Everyone's
us.
like,
Give it
and
to
thanks
us.
for doing the interview first with me, by the way. It just shows the
Yeah,
respect because I'm sure
I
you could have
wanted to
gone
give you
in
the
any
exclusive because
massive platforms.
well, because
Yeah.
like I was saying, you were one of the first after the Patrick Bet David interview, and I think calling Patrick Bet David supportive or civil would be a little bit of an overstatement. But after that, this was the big platform. This was the big interview that really helped. And in case you were curious, I still have people, seeking to join the organization. And of course, we
Wow.
always ask, where'd you first find out about us? I want to know what's working. And it's very common. I hear fight back with Jake Shields.
Wow,
So you get a little
that's
credit there.
awesome. Yeah, and I've actually spent a good amount of time with your organization. That's why I believe with them. It's not like I just met you one time. I've met a lot of people's families. We had that day where I got up at 3 or 4 in the morning and went out and did like a 12-hour hard work day. But that builds a bonding amongst men that lots of men don't do anymore. They don't have this hard work. Then we went and trained jujitsu together. Having dinner with these people. And they're actually normal people. So what's shocking is not like these
Surprising.
nothing wrong with being socially awkward, but it's like a normal group of people trying to
Mm.
like trying to make the country better. We'll get into questions in a minute, but one that's always asked is, one, you're always called a Fed, but I think this is a perfect thing, something you do really smart, no gun training. And some people get angry about that. Oh, they can do gun training, but solo, but not amongst their group. I think this is perfect. That's one of the biggest way the ATF or the feds would destroy the organizations. That's how they got Randy Weaver, Waco, Texas. I'm assuming you're a smart guy. You probably looked through these cases and put that together.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's really just a cost analysis because the general organization, so in the organization, the social infrastructure, right? Well, there's three things I like to think, three forms of infrastructure that benefit the organization, which is ideological infrastructure, which is we all need to believe the same thing. We all need to have the right idea about why we're here and what we're doing. And that's the first thing you need to build. Then you have social infrastructure. There needs to be leaders. There needs to be men with experience in these roles. This is the kind of legitimacy of your internal structure, right? If everybody just shows up and all they have in common is that they believe the same thing, it's going to be really hard to organize them because you need the social infrastructure, you need hierarchy, you need internal trust and faith on a logistical level, and then you have physical infrastructure, which is assets, spaces, things, right? It's pretty obvious. But all of those things I can build, and all of those things are useful immediately and almost in every single circumstance that we're likely to run into. With firearms training, there is a very specific, very rare, very unlikely circumstance in which that is ever going to be useful in aggregate. If there's some huge societal collapse, well, then everybody needs to know how to,
Yes.
That's not something I believe in as a likelihood. And even if I could see that maybe China invades Red Dawn style tomorrow, let's say China, it's big crazy calamity. Yes, it would probably be useful in that situation if every single Patriot Front member is a commando ready to go.
Yeah.
But let's say that doesn't happen, which is probably more likely, right? And then it's a huge risk because it's so much easier if there's guns around for an ATF agent or somebody undercover to show up and say, hey, well, guns are okay. We're all hanging out with guns. Do you want to see my really cool one? Do you want to go look at this really cool piece of something? And then it's that line becomes so I don't seek to not only exist, within the law, but about 10 spaces within the law. Because in that middle ground, I establish for myself, right, within organizational rules, if anybody even starts talking about guns, even if they're all legal, then we can step in and say, hey, that's a little suspicious. Hey, that's kind of breaking a norm, and we're going to intercede. And I'm not saying a member gets suspended if he says, oh, I have an AR-15. I'm not going to suspend a man for that, but we're going to talk to him and say, hey, it's a don't ask, don't tell policy. We just need to make sure you're following all the laws.
There are no way discouraged from doing gun training. It's just not part of the
and I encourage lawful firearm ownership. And I don't agree with all the gun laws in the country. I'm not a big gun guy, and I don't know everything about the laws. I do generally think the Second Amendment is being infringed in a lot of ways in a lot of places, but. And I don't discourage people, but I do discourage people from breaking the law because I just don't think breaking that law is not a good way to protest it. You protest the law in other ways in this circumstance, and it's just not practical. And again, the circumstance in which our social organizing is valuable, the circumstance in which our political organizing is valuable is all the time, everywhere, nonstop. The circumstance in which having an actual militia would be extremely rare, extremely unlikely, and much more likely to be dangerous.
It also could be formed last minute if things, but if it's broken up, it can't be. And that's exactly how they got Waco, all these other things. So
if you could choose to have an army without rifles or rifles without an army, which would you rather? Right. Which is more?
I'll take the army, and we can worry about the rifles later. You have an army. You have an army built if need be. But anyways, one last question, then we'll open up the question and answer. I saw several people being like, "Oh, he doesn't name the J." It's on YouTube, so I have to be careful how I say. I'm on my last warning. He doesn't name the J. Blah blah, which you do. But also, something I was really impressed about you is you're not about complaining. I mean, you'll mention these things. Don't get me wrong, and talk about the problems within our government. But you're all about building. I believe. I don't want to misquote you. I believe your beliefs are about you have to build the community, build the men up first, and then have a strong country. Is that kind of a correct assumption?
Well, yes, and I did mention, the people of that ethno-religion in my speech in Washington. But, and I did mention them among others, and
that
I
protected
talked about
group.
I could list the enemies of the nation, but I'm not going to desanctify this day further with their description, right? It's not about them. This is about
Yes.
us. This day is about us. The nation is about us. It's us that are going to make the difference. All these people, they're going to do what they're going to do, but this is us. This is our responsibility. This is what we have to do. And I think that's a huge thing. And I also said, if we want our country back, we need to impose the change upon ourselves first. We need to be an example of the kind of country we want to live in. And that's kind of what these marches are about. The people see the discipline, the coordination, the unanimity of focus and thought, and that's not by accident. That is an image into the type of virtues and behavior we believe are more needed in the country. Patriot Front is a counterweight against the culture. And what helps with a counterweight is if it's further off on the side, it's so coordinated, it's so united, it's so cohesed together, right? It is such a big deal. And it's so striking, it's spectacular, right? That is a big difference in how much you can contrast a society. And I do it by just being genuine. I don't overplay anything I believe or anything I say. There's no secret message behind closed doors. You spend hours and hours and hours.
Yeah,
with
no,
me
we
talking
spent.
about
You're
guys.
exactly the same on camera. I'm close, but I'm a little bit, bad humor.
I've heard of
and
you
stuff, so
things.
I'm worse than you, talking about Uncle H and like all this stuff.
Yeah.
You're exactly the same on and off camera, exactly. So that's true. And,
Exactly.
But you also give back. People respect you because you have to give back. You can't just take
Yes.
and have genuine respect. You realize you don't want people to worship you like a god. You realize that it's like you're trying to build community's everything. You've built such a good community. I've really enjoyed my time around Patriot Front. You built people get jobs for each other. Like you're building your own communities within communities. And I don't know if you give them titles, but it's almost like you have like generals. It seems like I wouldn't call them that, but these people that are under you that are helping you do things. And you've actually built a main location. I don't know if you talk about that with a gym in it and offices and there's land. I don't know. I think there's some kind of connection between you and Arvo, I don't know, at least semi-connection, at least somewhere there.
We've been there a few times and we've volunteered. Yeah, there's no official organizational or legal connection, but I do support what they're doing. There are a lot of internal leaders. We have network directors. We have people on the big planning committee that help our actions. There's coordinators. We had to have a lot of drill coordinators actually. They're not drill instructors. They're drill coordinators. It's very different for the action. And just the scale. I mean, I don't know how many people who are listening to this have ever tried to manage 400 men, on the march. It is a challenge.
Oh man.
And that's especially with the weather conditions and with, moving through all those logistical scenarios, you have people in all these different roles, and a lot of these guys have been in these roles for years, right? A lot of these guys have been managing marches for years. They've been, protecting the vehicle exchange for years. They've been planning things, scouting things for years. But I mean, it's a stressful situation. There's a lot of pressure, and it's not just us, right? The opposition, the police force, they all get a vote in how things go, right? So we have to consider that, and it's very high pressure with a lot of these guys and what they're doing. But we have such a strong bond together, and we're not debating ideology. There's no difference of conviction when we go out there, right? It's just how to get the job done. We are all so united in that purpose. And seeing the guys work together, even under these very difficult circumstances, was extreme. And some of these guys, you think it was hot to walk 3 miles or so, but some of these guys were running up and down and up and down and up and down the column. So if you ever see any videos come out and the guys are extremely, extremely wet from sweat, it's because they were doing sprints in 107 degrees for hours, and that is the type of conviction that it takes to get these actions done. And it's just a good example of, PF will be there no matter what. And when you have that type of cast iron, manpower to work with, you can achieve so much more, right? There's so many guys out there who would, in the face of waking up at 4 a.m. to do that kind of, strenuous action, with the possibility of, and it's not a dangerous thing, but sure, there's always the possibility of
the
some
legalities. There's some shooter. There's a little bit, but you lead through example.
There's something about it. Go ahead.
When I went and worked with you for that day, the hurricane disaster relief, it was so sad those girls died. But you led by your hard work. You weren't being bossy. You were just working your ass off. So then it's like, fuck, I better work my ass off, And I've worked hard through fighting, but I haven't done a hard day's physical labor in a while. And something feels good about it when you're sore the next day. You're out as men hauling brush, hustling, and then you're working really hard. You're not just telling us what to do. You're busting ass. So it gives everyone oh, we got to work hard. And it's And you guys get no credit for it. Instead, they run articles being like, "Oh, white supremacist
Well, we
organizations."
don't do it for the credit, right?
Yeah.
But no, and I think that's a huge thing about what we do is the leading by example. And I'm working with volunteers, and you look into that column of men, and you imagine all those guys waking up at 4 a.m., at our big campsite and everything. Nobody has to be there.
No.
There's no contract. In the military, you
No one's
sign a
getting paid.
contract, and if you leave, you go to jail, right? Or at a job, they stop paying you, and now you can't pay rent, or all these other things. There's nothing keeping anybody there. There's nothing keeping anything about Patriot Front present together. All the rules, all the leadership, everything only exists because of its own built-up legitimacy within the men of the organization. The moment somebody doesn't want to do it anymore, I can't make them do anything, and I don't want to. I don't want to have that power over men. At least not, for a while. But, I don't want to make them do anything. Because I have to lead through consensus. I have to lead by not just telling the men the what, but the why. And that's such a huge deal. I had a whole, speech in my conference, and one of the principles of leadership was, don't just say what. You have to tell people why. You're working with volunteers, and you need to respect that. And the classic American tradition of the volunteer, right? I mean, you look back at the Revolution, a huge aspect of the Revolution was started by volunteers, right?
Yep.
It was manned by volunteers, and even the militias, they could walk the field at any time, and sometimes that was actually a problem. But it's something very primordial within the American spirit, and I think our leaders work best when they're dealing with men who could go back to their farm whenever they want, and I think that's when you find the real character of leadership.
Yep, agree. Okay, we're doing some audience questions. There's a bunch already in. If you guys want to ask some questions, you can put them on YouTube or Rumble. I'll get to the good ones I can. If someone super chats, it'll be put obviously read. Unfortunately, I lost monetization, so you can't super chat on YouTube. For talking about protected groups. Apparently, some groups in this country are protected and others are not.
They're talking about Americans, right? Americans.
Yeah, yes. It's certainly not white men, I can tell you that.
No.
Probably these really rich people that pretend like they're white. Okay, the first question, I was wondering what the thought... Oh, that's the wrong one. Is that the right one? Sorry, I think... my phone just fucked up. Okay, let's go back to the beginning where I had Sorry, I'm fucking this up. Let's see where we at. Here we go. All right, now I'm here. I was wondering what of the thought of having a B team of fatties. Patriot Front does not allow fatties. B team would work to get to A team fitness. Why? Many very wise, talented brothers are fat. Patriot Front Brotherhood could save a fat white man. They can be the social media wing and the other jobs.
Very good. Well, perhaps if we ever need to fend off an amphibious invasion, we could send out the B team to sink their ships by climbing aboard. So yes, you can join Patriot Front. There's a limit. You can join Patriot Front if you're overweight, even maybe obese. There's some guys where I think there was an instance where a man was maybe 400 pounds, and he was doing very well. He had already lost a lot of weight, and he was doing everything right with the diet and the exercise and the gym memberships, and not just weight training, but jiu-jitsu and a total strict regimen of lifestyle in order to achieve that goals. But we still told him, right now you're not capable of doing a lot of things that we're doing. Because, we have to be able to... The march in Washington is a great example. It was hot. It was strenuous. If you're carrying 200 pounds of fat on your body, you are a liability. Not just for yourself, but for the men who are literally going to have to carry you out of there, for the truck which is going to have to come pick you up, whenever that happens, right? If that happens on camera, golly goodness, that's going to be seen 1 million times, and I'm going to make you watch it 1 million times, right?
So stop eating those Oreos, lose some weight, and then join Patriot Front. We have a bunch of super chats in. This is great. People,
but you have to lose the weight, at some point. So start now.
But you do get people that are slightly overweight. You just encourage them to lose weight. Okay,
yes.
Looks like we have a bunch of them. So
let's see.
What do you think of the nationalist folk legend, the Saw Donkey? I don't know who that is.
I don't think anything because I don't know what that is. I'm sorry if that offends whoever commented this.
Yeah, sorry guys, we don't know who you are. Here's a big super chat. Thank you. I'm aware Patriot Front isn't a neo-Nazi organization, but there are older clips of members making neo-Nazi statements, e.g. Sig Heils. What's the vetting process less strict than the past?
I think I know what he's talking about. So there was one video of like 5 people, and I think they really liked this, and it was leaked, and I think this video was filmed in 2019 2020, and it was sent to me way back then, and these 5 guys, they thought they were real smart. They thought they were cool. They thought, man, this is so awesome. And they send me this video, say, hey, Thomas, can we use this? And actually, the part where the guy said, see, Kyle, was actually after the video was supposed to be cut. And I just watched the video and was like, no, I don't, no, stop doing this. Don't, just forget this ever happened, y'all, please. And that was it. That was the 5 people. And it was only one person who said it in one video from 7 years ago. So this was not an official slogan we've ever used. And again, am I morally offended if somebody says "See Kyle"? If I'm morally offended when I see a swastika, no. But I choose to have a domestic and quite nativist ideology and messaging system. So the vetting in an ideological sense has always been the same. My beliefs have always been the same. Do sometimes people get carried away in comms when they think nobody's looking? Yeah, but that's why we have an internal culture. And that's going to happen in any group. There you go.
I have like Mexican friends that are like big fans of Hitler. Like, come on, things are changing. And also, you push America. You're very big on America. Like when Patrick David kept being like, you haven't read Mein Kampf, which I haven't either. I mean, I probably should, but he was like lecturing you about it. Like, you should. It's like, no, I study American literature, which are you sell the pamphlets or give away your you have all these pamphlets, which you've given me a bunch of them on all the Americans. I appreciate that because I was able to read up and hear what a lot of the founders and the great Americans have had to say.
I feel like when Patrick Bet David asked me about Hitler, and I said, no, I'm not a big Hitler guy. I'm not prepared to talk about Hitler on an academic level. He just took a massive stack of questions about a mile long and just threw them into the trash. Because that's what he wanted the entire interview to be, right? Yeah. And I was just thinking, our march in Washington, I could have made the speech about Hitler. I could have made it about the Holocaust. We could have dressed like the NSDAP, and the whole discussion, the whole virality, everything you'd be seeing would be relitigating the legacy of Adolf Hitler for the 1,000th time, for the 100,000th time, and it would have gone nowhere because I don't think that there's going to be any new discoveries about Hitler for the next however many years. I think that has been tread into oblivion, and it's time for us to represent our organizations, our cause, our present reality of our nation, because somebody has to. Anyways, more questions.
No, I agree. And obviously, I think that's an interesting subject, and maybe it's been a little mischaracterized. But like, you're looking forwards at America. Why would you take that and try to push something that has such a negative connotation? It's just not the viable solution. The solution is, I'm an American. I'm gonna do my own thing. We're a different time, different place. You're gonna build it up your own way.
And somebody can join the organization, and many people do, who have quite contrary to the mainstream narrative opinions about Hitler. Yeah. I don't mind that. I think I might even.
So there's no rules on like.
No, but you have to be an American. You have to believe in our own cause. Again, I don't pearl clutch when I see a swastika, but we have our own symbols because it's what I believe. It's what we believe. We're not doing this for shock value. If I wanted shock value, we'd go out there looking like Bond villains, but we don't. Anyways.
This is not Germany. Yeah. Anyways, we have a bunch of super chats. So thanks people for the money. I appreciate it. Getting demonetized on all platforms just a couple weeks ago. For a couple of days, I was like demotivated, being like, oh, should I keep my podcast? I'm like, of course, I'm not going to let these people win. Okay, anyways.
Many questions.
Could Thomas expand on some of the economic principles or systems that Patriot Front advocates for?
Right. So specific economic systems. I do not have an economic, policy platform available for anybody. I'm a big not a policy. I'm an ideology guy. I think generally the country should own the economy, or the economy will own the country. What does that look like in practice? I don't have all the answers for you right now. That a politician would lie to you, I won't. I think there's a lot of things we could do. I believe domestic industry is huge. We can't be a country that simply subsists off of consultants and coffee shops. We need to have a real economy made by people who make real things, real jobs, which are either extracting raw materials from the earth or taking raw materials, applying labor to them, and having an increased quality product. Right?
Not selling short futures.
Again, there's so much of the economy that's fake, and I do think I don't like how insurance companies essentially run the economy.
Yes.
I don't like how everything is stocks. Crypto is stocks. Everything is fluctuating, speculative value. I think speculation is a cancer. I think usury is just unthinkable. Now, I don't know exactly how the economy would work if you couldn't or didn't have to borrow money for a house or for some other things. Yeah. I would be interested in doing these, but what I can tell you is if I was anywhere near close to in charge of these things, if let's say I was president, PBD asked me if I was president, let's do that hypothetical. One guy on the train, actually, on the way into Washington, we were talking to him, and he said, if you were president, so I get this question a lot. I don't think that it's as realistic as some people, but, we're here. So, what I would do is I would get the best economists I could possibly find. I'd put them in a wing of the White House, and I'd sit them at a table, and I'd lock the doors, and I say, hey, you all get to get out when you have a good plan on how we can fix these things, right? Speculation, usury, overreach of, we need the proper exploitation of our natural resources without damaging the natural grandeur of our beautiful continent, right? We need industry, we need autonomy, right? We need all those things, and you're going to get me a good plan, and you're going to convince me of it, right? And then you can go home, right? That's what I would do, and I think that would work pretty well.
You convinced me.
The willpower.
I'm voting for you for president if you run.
Okay.
That's perfect.
I'm not
answer.
35 yet. It'll be a while.
Yeah. Let's go, Thomas. Thanks for the money. Didn't have a question. Really appreciate it, guys.
Going.
Thomas's speech lit Twitter on fire. Small accounts were getting 1 million views, and the conservative gatekeepers were getting mogged. My account and others got banned. Patriot Front is the real deal. So, yeah, I think that's true.
Well, I think this was one of the first examples of people actually, and I like how many people enjoyed the speech, and I did work very hard on it. It was memorized. I did go over it. I went over it many times, and I made little tweaks here and there, but it was a very laborious effort. Full disclosure, see, I'm being very honest with you today.
Yeah, you could have just been like, oh, that was on the cuff. I saw people saying that, and I was thinking, there's no way that was on the cuff.
No, I did actually even look at my notes once. We cut that out of the video, though, but I briefly glanced at my notes.
Good job.
I know, see, I got to tell you.
People are saying that was on the cuff. I'm like, bro, that was way too good to be on the cuff, but it was still excellent.
It was very much practiced. But anyways, that was one of the first examples where people actually watched the speech at large. A lot of times people the only clips that go viral are just people marching, which is great, but it doesn't tell the whole story, and it leaves a bunch of people asking, well, why are they even here? What do they say? What's the point, right? That's the point. Now you finally see it, and go back. If you like that speech, go back to a lot of the other ones. There's some bangers in there.
Let me add something real quick.
Sure.
You are banned from everything. This is your only way to get attention. You're not allowed on Twitter. You're not allowed on Instagram. You're not allowed on Facebook. You're not allowed anywhere. You had to find a way to draw attention. Is why I believe that's a big part of the reason why you've done it. It also looks good, patriotic, but a big part of it is that.
So a lot of the things that we're doing, a lot of the things that we're doing that people think are valuable, we are doing constantly across the entire country. How many people were talking about our disaster relief efforts, or our conventional political efforts, or our book clubs, or our gyms on the 3rd? How many people were talking about it on the 4th, and the 5th, and the 6th, and the 7th? That is the difference that the demonstration makes. How many people in our demonstration were arrested, attacked, doxxed? None. It was safe. It was effective. And I mean, we achieved national news story status. I mean, there's even stories about the stories, right? There's been several new developments about that black lady on the train. Maybe we'll get into that. But I mean, all of that happened because we did a march. That's why it happened. I mean, people may say, oh, well, I don't get it. Sorry, the world gets it. It happened.
For people that don't know, let's explain that black girl situation. It went super viral. This black girl.
I'll explain the situation with Rosa Farts, as they say. That's what people are calling her. Some people are saying it.
It's so unreal.
So the guys were riding the train, and for those of you who don't know, this is new information. I tell everybody in the briefings. We have maybe 2 briefings, and I'm constantly telling people to be safe, be cordial. It doesn't matter who's on the train. You're going to see some weird-looking, smelly people on the D.C. subway. Get used to it. Be nice to them. That's what I tell them, because we can't afford any trouble at all. I know the D.C. police, the Metropolitan Police, the Capitol Police, the National Park Service, all these people did not want any trouble whatsoever on the 4th of July, and I was not going to give them any. Not to mention the Metro Transit Authority. So everybody's told, do not crowd around other pedestrians, do not mess with commuters, do not interact with them unless they're friendly, all these things. And that lady was just sitting there. She was never in any danger whatsoever. I don't even think, actually, fun fact, this is also new information, breaking news. That video, so there was a famous photo of a black lady, and there were PF guys all around her, and she was sitting in her seat, unbothered, unmolested,
Well, she had to ride near white men.
I know, right?
That's like getting stabbed in the back if you're.
And some people say, oh, well, she made it home just fine. She's homeless, so that problem. But she has a long rap sheet of destruction of property, larceny. I believe some people are saying allegedly. I don't want to be sued. But she has various charges that people have seen and reported, and one of them is public indecency. And there's another video of her, older, not taken from the same day, of her taking her drawers off taking her pants off
I believe that was
on
also
the
on
subway,
the train, right?
and which we didn't capture on the 4th. Some of our guys were actually leaving the train, and as soon as we got off, guess what she did?
Took her
She
pants
began
off.
to disrobe and go crazy, and maybe jumped in a trash can or something, allegedly.
So you guys kept her in line. It's like, oh, white guys, I better hop and sit in my seat. So what's the
We
message
should
for
be
this?
hired to ride public transit in every major city until we can figure out what's going on. That's what I say. PF members
The next
should be
super
doing.
chat is perfect. Free our sister. Free Roser farts. Support from United Youth. What perfect timing of that super
Free her
chat.
from what?
I think they're just joking. I think they're being sarcastic with free.
No, I know.
That's just funny.
And they
timing.
really can't pick. They can't pick one. You know, the media tried to pick, a black darling because they like to make everything about blacks. We do something, and
really
it's not
do.
about black people. And they say, how can we make this about black people? How can everything be about black people? And they pick one, and they never pick well, do they? And this was a
pick
really
well
quick
in this
turnaround.
one, that's for sure.
Yeah, it took like 50 years to find out that the original Rosa Parks was a communist agent, and this one it only took 50 minutes.
Hired by the Jays to be there. Like, she wasn't really tired. I don't want to get up. I'm tired. My feet sore. But she was planted there. Isn't that crazy? People,
Exactly.
same people manipulating. And like I said, obviously there is a problem amongst that, but you're about building community. Anyways, let's back to track.
Yeah, I saw somebody say, like, can you believe there was this black lady in Patriot Front and a Reuters photographer, a news photographer, all on the train in D.C.? This was staged. And I was like, Patriot
Have you
Front,
been to DC
black
train?
people and photographers are really common in D.C., actually. You'd be surprised how
everywhere.
commonly those interact with each other. You're
Okay.
likely to see all of those on the trains. Go ahead.
Exactly. Fuentes stated after DC that marches provide instant and likely non-existent benefits, and Patriot Front would better to focus on networking and electro-engineering. Any comment? No,
Right.
electioning. That was the word.
Yeah, electioneering.
I mean, we already kind of explained the reason.
Well, I'll get into that.
Anyway,
And
unlike Nick, you're actually banned.
Fuentes is coming around to a few things because before he didn't say, and now I don't think he'll admit he's having a change of opinion. It's very slow. It's under the surface, but he used to not even say that the other things that we're doing are good. And I think our marches also give us a platform to showcase everything else that we do. So in case anybody doesn't know this, Patriot Front, we also do disaster relief. We also network within conventional politics on a local level and even sometimes a congressional level. We also do fitness and health and book clubs and social spaces and family events and literature and homeschooling and everything. And just everything you can possibly imagine that's useful. We do all of these things.
Yes.
We go on hikes. Just you name it. You name it. If it's worth doing, we do it. And if I haven't thought of it already, and somebody wants to come to me with the idea, I might consider it, and we might replicate it across the entire national scale. Right? I believe in these things. And were people talking about those things on the 3rd? No. Were they talking about us on the 4th? Yes. The demonstration makes a difference. If Mr. Fuentes,
I've done this
doesn't-
other stuff with you, and
Yes,
I
exactly.
post something, but no one cared.
And again, the men that you see, first of all, the immediate negative effects of the Washington, D.C. demonstration, the men were not attacked, the men were not doxxed, the men were not charged, nobody was arrested or detained. The D.C. police, actually the D.C. Capitol Police and the D.C. Metro Police, especially the Capitol Police, I know J6 and all those various things. I'm not a fan of what happened there, obviously. On any side, I think the whole thing was a mess and should have been avoided. But in my experience, and I'm not a Fed, in my experience, when I walk up with the demonstration, the police did not know we were there. They weren't on us until we were already walked a couple blocks. And they walk up, and a guy pulls up his car. He's a cop, and you can tell he's one of the liaison officers, right? Rolls down his window, says, "Hey, where are y'all going? We'll block traffic just to make sure everything's safe." And I say, "Hey, we showed up early to avoid all the permitted events. I just want to let you know I don't want any trouble. I don't want any harm to any people or property. Just here, we're going to walk down this place." And I actually thought we might be going possibly near to one of the fountains, which was technically on Capitol grounds. So we changed that and said, actually, there's other people there. We're not going to go there. We're going to go a different way. Thank you for helping us keep clear of anybody. We don't want any trouble. We went to Union Station instead, which has recently been beautified. One of the good things that Trump administration has done. It looks way better than when I was there last time. But again, we were cooperative with the police. The police have to kind of let you walk around and demonstrate in DC, because if they said, nope, you can't demonstrate, then I could come back and sue them for $1 billion trillion, and I might win, because a lot of liberals have probably done that in the past. So they kind of have to
I
let
doubt you would
go
win
right
there in DC, but
exactly. But I mean,
you
the
never know.
police in DC are very professional. So the idea that you're going to show up and they're going to shoot you all is a little bit of, in the guys that I'm getting, right? Thousands of people are interested in the organization now in an I want to apply capacity that they weren't previously. And those people are going to staff all the teams and all the roles and all the jobs that, Fuentes and a lot of other people, who share his opinion think are valuable, right? You want us to do more of those things? Cool. I'm going to do a march and I'm going to get hundreds of new guys on those jobs for those things that you like. That's what I'm doing.
I've had several people in my DMs asking me how could they reach out and join Patriot Front. So how can people do that?
patriotfront.us. View the website, and I could tell you to go straight to the join page at patriotfront.us/join, but I actually encourage go through the whole website, go down the home page, check out the FAQ, watch the What is Patriot Front video. You might even learn a few things. Go down our action page and our updates page and the social page. Really read through the website, check through our Telegram, check through a few other things, learn what we're about, because there's a lot of people who I can tell, they see the website, they beeline for the join page, and they submit an application, it gets deleted. You're not up to snuff yet, I'm sorry. So really take some time to learn. It's and even if you applied right now, there's a massive backlog. Again, a lot of people want to get joined. So take your time learning and submit your application when you're ready, right? But again, there's a lot that we do. I believe in doing it safely. There's a lot of groups which have come and gone. There's a lot of people who have been doing nationalist activism since 2017 that have come and gone. There's a lot of people who did stupid things and ended up in jail. I ended up in jail a few times briefly, but I don't think it was for stupid things. So that's different. I'm special. But, obviously I care about safety. Obviously I care about these guys. Do you think these guys would follow me into danger? Well, they would follow me into dangerous situations.
They probably would. They probably follow you. They probably follow you anywhere. A lot of these guys.
They have that trust
you wouldn't
in me
lead them
that
there.
Any risk that we do take is worth taking. And I think at a certain point in the state of our country, you have to believe that. You have to approach the possibility of risk with the idea that, well, when it gets that bad, we're ready. And you can be doxxed and fired for being a groyper. You can get doxxed for having just a single wrong opinion. But you need a support network. You need to work with other people, and risk can be mitigated, but ideology is firm in what is necessary. Anyways,
there's always risk in life, but you just do everything you can to mitigate it. So I'm not going to tell anyone there's zero risk of joining Patriot Front, but you do everything you can, and they look out for you too. Remember, we were going to Dan Blazarian's house, and I'm like, I can't bring any people over there. And the guy's like, hey, I'm not comfortable just meeting you, hopping in his car with you, taking off with him. Like, oh, okay, so brought one of the other guys. Like, okay, they're looking out for your safety too, which makes sense. I thought about it. I'm like, wait, we just met. I'm trying to drive you off in my car. You don't know. I could be some psycho.
You're going to at least have to kidnap two people.
Yeah, that's harder, exactly.
There's more of a trail. But
more of a hassle. Like, I don't want to. And it was a big guy that came in too. I'm like, God damn it, I was going to kidnap Thomas, but this is too much work now. Let's see, where are we in questions? Fuentes, and thanks all for the super chats. We have a ton of them.
Let's do it.
In the system you propose, what exact mechanisms would prevent your centralized authority from mirroring the overreach you're currently mad about?
So I actually think the original basic premise. Now, again, this is a lot of policy stuff.
Yeah, which is not your primary thing.
By the time I'm, within reach of the Oval Office, right? By the time, Patriot Front and our ideas are, spitting distance from federal power, there's going to be so much that is different. So many lines which will be crossed. So many taboos which will have been infringed upon and discarded entirely. The world will be a different place. And the circumstances which will exist to be referenced with these types of questions will be totally different. An answer I gave you now in best possible predictive faith would be made absolutely and unequivocally obsolete by that point. Still going to try though.
I believe.
I'm still going to try though for fun, for the fun of it. I believe in the basic 3 branches model of government. I believe that you should have the executive, which his job is to enforce the law, the legislative, which his job is to, and also to lead. The legislative should be to make the laws, and the judiciary should be to review those laws and stop either of those 2 branches from going overboard. Now, all 3 of those branches have problems. I'm not a huge fan of everything in the Constitution. I'm a fan of having a Constitution. I like the Bill of Rights. I like the freedom of speech and assembly, even for people I don't agree with, funnily enough. I don't believe that the solution is simply to install a dictator that likes me. me, which I actually don't believe I would like.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have a very infantile, bless their hearts, view of the situation, and their thing is, oh, well, we just need a dictator who's like cool and that he likes me.
Yeah.
But the thing about dictators is you
his
don't really
son
get
might
to
not
pick
be
them.
cool.
Well, but the problem with dictators is you don't get to pick him, right? He picks
exactly.
himself and he imposes himself on you. And if you don't like anything he does, well, then tough. You have to bleed the country dry in order to fix it. That's the reason why it was such a big deal in American history when you had the Federalists give over power to the Democratic Republicans with the election of Thomas Jefferson. A lot of European observers thought, oh, well, the Federalists are going to start a war and they're going to kill all the Democratic Republicans in Jefferson's party before they hand over power. And then that just happened. We had a peaceful transfer of power from one party to another, and everybody was flabbergasted that you could do that without destroying the country, because that's how monarchies work, and it's also a lot how dictatorships work. I don't believe in that kind of system. And also, one more thing on the subject. You're saying, how can you build a perfect style of government which will never decay and never end up at? You can't do that, because people are not permanent. People are not perennial things. As soon as you set up your government, it begins to decay. It begins to change. It begins to be changed by circumstance and the people within it. That is unfortunately how life works. But certain things are cyclical, and it means they come back around. And I believe there will be new generations of patriots which will be up to the task, inspired by the ideals of their forefathers, which will be us in many, many years. And I think that I have faith in that. I have faith in the continuation of a legacy which is far more immortal than in an exact system. I think there's something in the blood which is primordial. The liberty we're fighting for today is the same liberty that the Anglo-Saxons fought for, in England before it was united. It's a very perennial thing, but the systems doesn't mean I want to make a good one. I want to make a good system. I want to make one that lasts another 250 years. But I do realize that by trying to make it permanent, you can make it very brittle and very fragile, and you can make fixing it almost too difficult. So that's my answer.
Yeah, things have to constantly be fixed. You have to try to raise good kids to be better. You're trying to build a community. Things aren't lasting forever. It has to You're the same with your own life, If I start eating like crap, I'll get fat. I'd be like, I was a world championship fighter. I'm a great athlete. I can get fat. Last month, I had a ton of money coming in. Oh, I got canceled from everything. Now I don't. Now I got to rebuild it. I will, but that's life. You have to rebuild things sometimes. You have to constantly be on things. You have to I can't say, oh, we were friends, so now me and Thomas are cool, then treat you like shit. Then we're not friends. Like, everything in life has to constantly be maintained, It's like people need to realize.
The law of battle is the law of life.
Yes, it can't go. It's because something happened once, it stays that way forever. People really need to realize that's not how it works. Yeah. Okay, so I really appreciate all the super chats, people.
I love it. These are good questions.
Yeah, love the 4th of July speech, which is super chat. Thanks so much for the money, and I think a lot of people love that speech. You nailed it.
I wrote it myself. Thank you.
Good. So let's see. Thomas, what are your favorite states to frequent? Submitting my application tonight.
Okay, well, I hope if I list one that he's not from, he won't change his mind. So for frequenting, I'll have to admit, I don't actually like being in D.C. that often because of how stressful it is. I really like New Mexico. This might be a weird answer, but I like New Mexico. I like it's beautiful, and whenever I'm going to New Mexico, it's on a nice outdoorsy trip. We're doing a big hike. We're going down Route 66. I love the classic Americana feel of a lot of the places. I love deserts. I love mesas. I like Utah and Colorado. Colorado's a little, Denver sucks. I'm sorry if anybody's from Denver and they like Denver. Wyoming is great. I like Oklahoma a lot, actually. I like Oklahoma. I like the small town feel. I like driving through Oklahoma. Missouri is beautiful. Tennessee,
Montana?
I feel... Yeah, Montana. I've been through Montana once, and I liked it. I actually did like it. I liked it but it was very far from home. I like Tennessee a lot. I feel like Tennessee has a kindred nature with Texas, and obviously Texas is my favorite. Yeah. Sorry, not a regionalist. New England's been great. I don't know. I like everywhere.
Sounds like you like beauty, nice people. What about California? San Francisco.
California, I've never been to San Francisco. It's on the list. I do like California a lot. I love the beaches. I love the mountains. There's a bunch of beautiful places. I was in Virginia recently, and I'm going through these rolling hills and these beautiful farms with the old stone walls, and you look around to some of these old homes and it's like it hasn't changed in 200 years. Obviously, some of these stone walls are probably new, but there's a certain spirit of it, and you can look around. And it's just such a beautiful place, and I said, it's just a shame who's in charge of it. And then I said, well, you could say that about everywhere. Alaska has also been. I've only been to Alaska for one time.
Haven't been there.
but it's tremendous.
I think we have the
Breathtaking.
most beautiful country in the world
We
and the
do.
best people. We still have
We
that. We
do.
don't take that for granted. Like we have just so many national parks here. Thanks Teddy Roosevelt for saving a lot of those. Like
It's
Zion
good that you
National Park. I
stopped
don't
me.
know
I
if
would
you've
list
been.
every state. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's like such a beautiful country though. Like all the national parks, the Yellowstone, the Zion, Yosemite. There's just like no country to match our beauty, in my opinion,
Well, we
and
have
great people
everything.
everywhere.
We have jungles, we have mountains, we have deserts, we have plains. We have rolling hills, we have short mountains, big mountains, we have lakes, rivers, valleys, canyons, mesas. Glaciers. Everything, and it's so wonderful. I love America. I love everywhere. Join and give me an excuse to go somewhere I
Yeah,
haven't been
I
before.
agree. Let's take our fucking country back instead of like. I remember one day I was thinking like, oh, maybe I should skip the country, go somewhere else. I'm like, no, fuck that. I'm staying in America. We're just gonna make our country better. So,
Exactly.
okay, thank you for holding our flags in the heat at the Capitol. It
Very
meant
good.
a lot to a lot of people. How do we reform the military institution to serve the ethos first? How big of a challenge is the
How do
mic?
we reform the military? Is what he's
The
saying.
military institution to serve the ethos first. So
Well,
that's hard.
in America and in the United States, the military authority is under the civil authority, right? And a lot of people, and sometimes I'm talking to guys and they say, oh well, it's like, well, in the military this, and and I do avoid Patriot Front looking too much like a military thing. I know what you'll say, oh well, you're marching, right? That's for practical purposes. But in America, the civil authority, the citizenry is in charge of the military. At least that's how it's supposed to work. And I think that's how it should be. I think the military should do the bidding of the civil government, should be elected by, perhaps a limited franchise, but a franchise of citizens. And obviously, not everybody who is a citizen should be a citizen nowadays, but that's a different subject. So, how do we get the military to, fall into line with the national interest? Well, you get the civil government to fall into line with the national interest. And how do you get the civil? That's the different question. You didn't ask that one, but
Yeah.
that's how you do it. It's actually very simple because the commander in chief can just order things. You
Yeah.
know, you can't just do that. That's actually one of the simplest parts of the whole process. And the military members can't really. I mean, they can. It gets messy, but they can't really just say no. So
Yeah.
again, what you asked was actually it's going to be one of the easiest things we have to do.
Yeah. Banning lobbying overall, weapons lobbying, foreign lobbying,
Yeah.
that would help right there alone. I'm sure it'll be a lot more complex than that, but that would be one big thing that could help us stop these wars.
That'll be a different day of the week where I lock a bunch of constitutional experts and analysts in one of the rooms of the White House. I'll have
Yeah.
to tell them, how do we ban lobbying? Because
Yeah, I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on just lobbying overall? Because I'm against it. What's your opinions on it?
well, obviously there's defining lobbying would be a big part of banning it because you can't just ban somebody. Because I'm technically lobbying for some things. I want some things to happen, and I
Yeah.
want, and I might mention the government. Is that illegal? So
So
you
corporate and foreign
you
lobby, I
need to
guess, should be a
define it,
question.
and you need to set some lines that if these are crossed, and again, I haven't really looked into how to legally do these things, but I do think it's a huge problem. I think there's a lot of money in politics that shouldn't be there. I think there is something fine about having a political action committee. I do think there's problems in the system. There's obviously problems in the system, and there's a lot of it which is just that it's the wrong people. Right, it's the wrong interests which are being represented. And if we got certain people and certain interests out of the country, then maybe it wouldn't be so much of a problem. But there are systemic issues with lobbying that need to be resolved, and there's also issues with what members of Congress are allowed to do and not allowed to do. So it's a big problem. We'll work on fixing it.
Was it Patriot Front? It was listed as Patriot Front, but that was in front of the was it Purdue Pharmacies, the people that made
Yes.
the sold OxyContin.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck them. I'm glad you called that out because that's
Yeah, that
devastated
was
so
a
many
long
white
time ago.
communities.
Yeah, that was back in 2019 maybe, and it was
Wow,
good to see
now,
that.
now
report.
it's
I was
viral.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw that video. I mean, it did some numbers back in the day, but yeah, we did that a long time ago, and I think it's the Sackler family, right? I
Yep.
think some of them actually have died.
They happen to be Jewish.
No, how coincidental.
Shocking, huh?
I don't believe this, but no, I mean that we did that a long time ago, and that is a big issue with like I say, people are living lives of despair and squalor. There's so many of our people that are not up to my own standard, and I'm not saying that is oh, I'm such a great guy, but
Yeah.
we need to look at our own. We need to
Yeah.
we need to be what we want the country to look like. You can't have a life in shambles. You can't be shackled to addiction and vice and start making claims about where the country should go. Fix your house. And then you can say where the country should go. You should. Some people just say, "Oh, well, take care of your own life, and then you're good." No, you need to impose that virtue upon the areas around you after that. How do you do that? Join Patriot Front. Next question.
No, I'm a strong believer of the first thing I need to do is get my own life in order, then help my family, then help other people. But if you're not helping yourself and your family, you can't. And the Oxycontin one, growing up in a rural white area, it was just devastated my community, lost friends to it. So I love seeing you calling that out.
PF is hugely anti-drugs, right? Actually, at our actions are virtually always dry events, even small little gatherings. No alcohol whatsoever, no cigarettes, no vapes. Some guys do have a nicotine, dependency, and that's understandable. It's very common. But they do the little pouches, just the minimal thing, but nobody smokes at our events. If you walk through the campsite of 400 men before action, you wouldn't see a single can of beer, you wouldn't see a single cigarette, a single cigar, a single nothing. We don't let any of that stuff in our events, and that's how the country should look.
Yeah, you do have like formal drug addicts and stuff, right? People that have cleaned their lives up.
There's a lot of people who have cleaned up their acts in our ranks. And obviously you're not allowed to go back into that stuff, but when people are struggling, we help them. Because act like a good government should. What should be done in this situation at large? How do you think a righteous authority would treat the people who are affected by these things? Then do that. And that's what we do.
Yeah, no, I think it's important if you have a friend struggling, help them. But sometimes someone crosses a line where they can't be helped, and then you have to cut off. Then you have to cut links with them. Sometimes that's the unfortunate reality. Someone gets to a point you can't have like drug addict in your organization.
No, that's a huge liability for legal, social, ideological reasons. But if we can help somebody and they're willing to take the discipline upon themselves, then we will do whatever we can. Because if anybody ever leaves the organization, I like to make sure, my personal rule is that happens with a clean conscience. I can't look back and say, "Oh, well, maybe I could have tried this, or maybe I could have tried that. Maybe I could have, helped him out in this other way." We go through the gauntlet with everything we can do, and the final result is always that this guy did not want the discipline. He did not want the virtue, and I can sleep soundly at night.
No, I think there were several friends that I've had to stop associating with, but I legitimately know I tried first. And then some people just don't want the help. Okay, the next question is, that's not the one I was at. Not sure who this is. He said, "What are your thoughts on Corey J. Mahler and the Stone Choir podcast?"
He's
American
good.
Christian Nationalist.
I like him. Good man. Met him once. Decent. Says nice things about the organization. Not personally a Lutheran, but I definitely get a lot of the things about it. Haven't listened to every episode of the podcast, but there's a lot of members who have, and a lot of nice things to say. If there is anything negative about him, I haven't heard it. So I think he's a good guy. People could go check him out and make up their own minds, but I have nothing bad to say about the guy, and I do appreciate his support and
awesome.
the nice things
the name sounds familiar. I bet I probably know him. Just like it looks familiar. I couldn't think who it is.
He's on X a lot. I think he has a pretty big.
I think I might even follow him on X. I know that name. Recognize the name. I think it was. Hey Thomas, love your work. However, I heard the Patriot Front has members leak. Any comments?
Has members leak? So there was a USA Today article which came out months ago, which claimed to have all these internal things, right? And one of the things that they had was that a statement about nonviolence that the organization has made. And that exact statement, verbatim, was also leaked in 2021 or 2, right? So it's the same statement leaked 4 years later that they're declaring as
but no actual leak came.
So there was also a leak about a dress code document, which was also the same dress code document, which was leaked in 2021 or 2. And it's funny that they would leak a dress code document because you just need to look at the march to understand what the dress code is.
Yeah, I know the dress codes.
Just look at it and just imagine I wrote that down.
Okay, buy these pants, buy this.
And no doxes have come from that. It was a quick little thing that was immediately resolved. And it hasn't harmed the organization at all. The publicity about it was Patriot Front, it's growing, doubling membership all the time, and they're strictly non-violent, and they have lots of stringent rules about how to organize to be very professional. Golly goodness, please stop saying it. Oh no, right? It's not doing what they think they're doing. But nobody has been harmed. Nobody's life has been impaired because of those statements. The breaking news that they thought it was that Patriot Front has a dress code. Goodness golly, how could you not think that?
I think that's pretty obvious.
and that we're strictly nonviolent. I'm glad they're finally reporting on that instead of calling us terrorists. Um, there you go. That's your answer. Not as bad as you might think.
You got sued. This black guy walked into you guys and said he was
Several
attacked.
times.
It's the most outrageous thing ever. It makes me so angry. Like he knocked into the guys with the shield, then he sued. And didn't he like win money from you? Oh, people ask
No.
like, oh, where are you funded? You don't have any money.
No, I'm.
By the way,
Sorry,
sorry,
in the
I'm
organization,
not sharing too much, but like you're not. It's not
no,
like you're
everybody in the
driving
organization that
Ferraris
has a
and stuff.
full-time job makes more than I do. I'm almost certain of it. I live an ascetic life. You know, I live a very simple life. You know, I don't like money. If I could live without it, I would. I like food and I like a roof over my head and I like somewhere kind of soft to lay down on. You know, at night sometimes. You know, if we're lucky, if it's a good day. No, I do this not for myself but for others. And yeah, the incident in Boston, the guy crossed the street, ran up to us, started attacking people, flailing his arms. You know, the guys who he was actively attacking, you know, pushed out their arms, not even touching him. That's what the shields are for. So we don't even have to touch you because I don't want to strike you. And then he kept running back into the crowd of people like 6 times. If somebody walked up to you viewer, you anybody on the street and started pushing and shoving you and saying, I'm not going to calm down. Don't tell me that. I'm not going to calm down. And then you push them away and say, hey buddy, calm down. Please keep your distance. And then he did, and you all repeated that situation 5 times. Do you think you would owe that man $3 million? No. If I wanted to pay that $3 million, which I don't, if I wanted to give that man, that homeless black man in Boston, $3 million, it would take the rest of my life. And also, well, I mean, if I had $3 million, I don't know, but I don't. I don't have millions of dollars. Suing somebody, and Fuentes talked about the lawsuits. Suing somebody does not make that money materialize. Patriot Front is not a legal entity. Patriot Front does not own property. It does not have a payroll. Patriot Front is an idea. Patriot Front is a conception of thought, right? And me personally, you know, anybody's welcome to sue me for $10 trillion. For all I care, it won't make a difference. I don't have it, but please just sue me as much as you like. You know, it doesn't make a difference, and you know, I'm happy that they do. Instead of trying to mess with anybody else who might actually have their life damaged by political stuff. I'm happy to take any of your political lawsuits. Please direct them to me personally. But anyways, that is not a death sentence, and you know, lawsuits are not as scary as people make them out to be. You cannot like send somebody to jail. We don't have debtors' prisons in America. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Unless you
it's
have
not
a lot of
60.
money, then it's a different story. But yeah.
Well, if you're a big corporation, then yeah, you should be really scared about these things. But I mean, we don't have debtors' prisons. It's not the 1600s. Oh, sorry, hit the tripod. But we don't have these things, and everything about law can just be worked with. You know, in a lot of ways. So yeah. Anyways, that is a crazy situation. But no, we don't go out there to harm anybody. We don't go out there to destroy things. And you know, all these incidents are very old. That was back in 2021 or 2022.
Yeah.
Very tough, very high news years. Those years. But you know, the organization obviously does not go out. You know, they were saying that my plan for the 4th of July in Boston, Massachusetts, was to find black people and attack them. I had to walk past probably hundreds, if not 100 black people before we came across that guy at the very end of our march. So the idea was I went across all of Boston, gave a speech, the big public library, the old State House where the Boston Massacre happened, and all these other places. And and then I was like, that black guy, that random one, that's who I want to attack. That's why I'm here. That's why I brought 120 guys. And also the idea, we're 120 to 150 white nationalist evil terrorists, and our goal is to attack a black guy, right? Sure. Let's just say hypothetically that's true, and it's not. All he walks away with is a scratch on his pinky finger because he started wailing on somebody's shield. If you have 150
that'd be pretty sad if that's all you
fight,
could do.
You know, Jake Shields, you're a fighter. You're an athlete. Imagine if there was 150 of you and you walked around and your goal was to beat somebody up. Do you think you'd walk away with more than?
I think we beat him up pretty bad. It's so weird how they make the racial thing such a big deal, and like you don't even push any racial hatred. You just want to have your own communities. Like that's why I talked to you early on. You're one of the first nationalists I talked to, and you weren't, because I have always had friends minorities. If you weren't hateful. I think it was you. I think talked to you and David Duke around the same time, and you both kind of went over how every single white country was just completely flooded with immigrants around the same time. And I just never really thought about that. They don't teach you that at school. Regular people where I grew up aren't having these conversations. Maybe there are a little more now. Then I realized that's why they don't. I'm not supposed to talk to guys like you. They don't want people thinking about this. Like, wait, why don't we deserve to exist?
No, and again, it's not about them. I don't hate other groups for their existence. I don't think somebody is a bad person for being born black, brown, or
Yeah.
yellow. Do I think that you deserve essential, privileges one of which I think is, being born a citizen? I think that's a privilege that should exist for a certain. But I mean, I want everybody to be better. But I'm gonna put my own people first. You know why? Because everybody else does it. And the
Exactly.
moment the whole thing about utopian, liberalism, where everybody, first of all, it's fraudulent from the get-go. It was never actually about that. But the idea that everybody just has to set aside their ethnic pride and their own self-interest and just care about everybody else before themselves. The problem is, what actually happens is one group tries that, and they start and they set down their own ethnic interest, and nobody else does it, and everybody else thinks, oh cool, I can screw these guys over, I can take their stuff, because they won't defend it, and then they do, right? And then the idea is like, it would only work if everybody did it at one time, and that's not happening. Just like okay, well, if all the armies in the entire planet, just everybody, we just melted down every weapon on Earth, right? We'd have world peace. Okay, cool. Do it first and see what happens to your country, right? Sorry, humans exist. Human nature exists. I wish everybody was perfect. If men were angels, we wouldn't need these things, but they aren't, so we do.
Yeah, I think a lot of white people aren't necessarily racist. They're just sick of a very clear double standard. We're not given the same rights. We're not treated the same way. They act like that girl was a lot worse than the white girl that was killed by a black man, full of black people in a train, having to just simply sit next to white men. It's crazy that they take that. It turned out she was pooping on the
probably was
train
barely
too.
conscious. She was probably on some stuff. Allegedly, I don't know. But yeah, she probably doesn't even remember that. Let's be honest.
No, she's like, whoa, am I hallucinating? Or are these men on masks?
Who knows?
It's just so ridiculous.
She
Let's
was
see. We
fine.
have.
Well, I mean, she's not fine, but she
definitely not
She
fine.
left that train no more or less fine than she started with.
You didn't stab her in the back. Let's put it that way.
No, and the thing, you see that march. There's not a single pocket knife on that march. There's not a single multi-tool. There's not so much as a screwdriver in anybody's pocket. Like we screen for all these things. We are absolutely unarmed, especially when you're going into D.C. We have no intentions of causing any harm. Again, I got everything I wanted to do out of that march. What do you think I would get more out of it if we punched a black guy there?
Or stabbed a black lady.
Yeah, what more do I get? No, it would harm everything I'm trying to do. No, that is an example of what happens when we show up and do what we want to do and leave, right? No issues, no lawfare, no nothing. Orderly, peaceful, law-abiding, not messing with permits, right? That's what I want. Anyways.
You put a lot of effort into following the law, looking at what can go wrong, seeing what they could get you with. I think you're great at looking ahead at all this stuff. So, okay, the next one is Mr. Rousseau. Do you believe sometimes some active clubs are going too far, like the fascism is cool quote in 60 Minutes?
No. So when Rundo on the 60 Minutes was talking about, there's fun in fascism, Rundo's conception of fascism, in my layman's understanding, and I don't even necessarily disagree with it, because there's a lot of people that have tried to define fascism over the years.
Yeah, I couldn't give you a clear definition.
But, and they even tried to, there were some people streaming the march and they were asking liberals, what is fascism? And even they all had different definitions. But, when Rundo was on that interview and he was talking about fascism, and I think very much, his whole 3.0 style, it's a representation of fascism as a culture, as an art form, as something which is passionate and unapologetic and nationalist and vitalistic. It's a through line of being. It's almost a philosophy for life more so than it is a, hey, let's look at the exact laws and statutes of Mussolini's Italy or Hitler's Germany and try to replicate those. When Rundo's talking about fascism, he's talking about a vitalistic lifestyle, something which is undaunted and courageous and just adventurous, right? He that's what he's conceiving, and I don't even necessarily disagree. I think that's one of the most enjoyable definitions of fascism, if you have to have one. And there's fun in that. There's definitely fun in that. And I think Patriot fun isn't entirely different from what he's thinking about, which is why there's mutual support between the active clubs and PF. So is he going too far? No. I mean, I think there's total sense in what he's saying. So
we shouldn't have to pretend like, those Germans weren't a little bit cool looking and had aura, and had good visuals. Like, you can't just, even if you don't just act like all of something as bad as retarded. And we're supposed to just do that in this country. And I'm sick of it. I think a lot of people are sick of it.
Generally speaking, there is something there is something freeing and something vitalistic about having a radical ideology, even if it's radical ideology I don't agree with. I almost respect someone more who has a strong life encompassing opinion and conviction about something. Somebody who
Yeah.
takes something seriously and is willing to sacrifice for that and reshape their lives around it. And obviously, I believe as men, and this isn't something which is restricted to capital F fascism, but the adventure, the strife, the willingness to bear strife, the kind of like Theodore Roosevelt talks about the strenuous life. If I was talking about those things today, people would call it fascist, right? If I was making those quotes, which I do, and they do. But there's something perennial about that. Were the Greeks and Romans fascist when they were doing when they were living those types of lives? Maybe, maybe not, right? It depends on your definition. Tarundo, absolutely. And that's what he's going for. Do I think that's too far? No, I think he's saying something. He's saying what we're all thinking. He's saying something worth saying.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I enjoy speaking to people that have really strong convictions and are considered extremists. That's one of the reasons I talk to people like you.
Yes.
And you ended up actually swaying some of my opinions on some things. Some of them I already have, but some things you explain things well in a manner that I didn't find hateful. I'm like, damn, he's making some good points. This is why they don't want you talking to people. And we're sitting there being like, damn, you're like making this stuff made more sense than I expected.
I talked to the doctors. They said they gave me an X-ray, not a hateful bone in there.
And I think that's why guys like you are the ones most banned, because it can resonate to people that like, oh, I have my good friend who's black and Mexican, and they just hear hate and they're like, oh, this guy's crazy. But then when they hear the explanation of every country's been flooded, every white country is basically not going to exist soon, you start being like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And then you mention how other groups help each other. And then I think about all my friends, yeah, they all help their other group more. If they don't know each other, they'll give the person a discount, help them out, help them with their car. And then the shit clicks. You're like, he's 100% right, everything he's saying.
And you can't even post our link on X right now. And we just made national news. We were one of the top stories of the 250th anniversary of the country. Big deal, big news. Lots of big people talking about us. And you can't even post a link to the website where we can give our side of the piece. You can try it. Maybe don't try it on your account.
Yeah.
But you just try it and it won't even let you post it. It won't even censor it afterwards. It just will not let the post go through. Right? I mean, it gets to a point where it's not just censorship; it's just deliberately like impairing news that people should know about.
They don't want people to hear you speak. And same with David Duke, because he was not this hateful monster. He's a little older now. I remember interviewing David Duke. My mom was freaking out, being like, "You can't interview him. Please don't do it." And then she watched the interview. She called and apologized. She's like, "Oh, this is not the guy I thought it was. You were right. I just completely thought he was this monster." But he wasn't. It shows what the media can do. It's getting harder for them to do that now is the problem. Before, they could have taken you, made you a total monster, and you don't have a platform, but at least now you can come on other podcasts, you can give that speech there. They don't want people seeing the truth. They want to make you guys out to be these evil villains and then give you no voice.
Absolutely. And I mean, our content, this is the biggest success we've had with the March, with our content getting out, with our explanations, our type of media about our own event getting out there, and our narrative is breaking through. And a lot of these legacy media outlets, they write their articles. Have you ever visited a regular news site lately? You get 10 different things. They ask you to pay. You have to click through 50 different ads for some made up product that doesn't exist. It's just so obvious that nobody's paying attention to these things anymore.
No. They don't get taken serious. Some CNN guy did a hate piece on me, but mine actually wasn't that bad. I just think it was so hard to make me look bad. But then he was like talking crap on you guys. I'm like, Donnie, like you're sitting there saying things that aren't true about him. Like, yeah, they're a white only group, but it's bullshit to say things. Just be honest. That's my opinion. Okay, we have really appreciate all the super chats, people. Love what you did, Thomas. You and the boys defined our 250th anniversary, and thank you, Jake, for sticking your neck out for PF and Thomas when it came a great personal economic cost to you. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's money's not the primary thing I base my life off, like you said. And in YouTube, they even gave me an example where I could stop attacking a protected group and take down a bunch of videos and stop attacking this protected group and potentially get my money back. And it's like, I just can't do that. I try not to hate people that do, if trying to feed a family and stuff. Life is tough sometimes, but it's like, I couldn't live with myself if I did that.
Yeah, for sure. Your principles are the most valuable thing you can have. I think Ben Franklin said, what's more valuable than gold? Diamonds. Than diamonds, virtue.
Exactly. And sometimes it costs you money, but sometimes it makes you money in the long run. So things come, and I have friendships. I have lots of friendships for like 20 years, 25 years. Not many people have that. And I have, people that respect me. And then same with you. I can see the respect you have. That's far more. You can't buy that. The respect you
No,
had, like I
you
said,
can
I pick
try.
up in small things. You can't buy the respect you have.
No, no, you can't. And any attempt to do so will give you something very fraudulent, and they will be sure to turn their backs as soon as the money dries up or
I've
stops
been
for a
around
moment.
rich people that are literally paying people to like hang out with them and girls and stuff. In a second, it's like it's pathetic for one. When these guys try to pay me to do that, it's like yeah, no, I'll pass. And exactly like you said, if the money dries up, it's instantly gone. People are talking shit about them behind their back. You just
Mhm.
feel zero respect. It's just like it's just sad. Like I couldn't imagine being in that situation when you're paying people to hang out with you.
Yeah.
Okay. How is the filing process like when joining Patriot Front? Is there a ton of background checks just in case there's risk by either infiltrators or Fed honeypots?
So I can't tell you about the whole application. Well, I mean, you can view the application yourself and see what it's like. I can't tell you about the whole the vetting process because that would reduce its effectiveness. If I laid it all out, then somebody
Say
could
how you're
review
doing
that
it.
and they could make a plan. I'm not saying that's what this person is doing.
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah, yeah.
reasonable question. But we ask a lot of questions. We're going to talk to you. We're going to have you fill out a form. And you don't have to put your ID. I don't need a copy of your driver's license. We don't need those types of things from you. For most of the vetting, it's not about, and even pretty much the entire vetting, it's not about giving us your identity. Because I want a two-way protection for your identity. I care about the identity protection, the information security of our membership to the point where it goes both ways. Now, during the interview, we're probably going to ask some questions which, might hit a little close to home about your life experiences, and maybe you're going to tell us where you went to college or other things which necessarily you wouldn't want to make public, with our activism. But that's fine and that's normal, and you should get to know people. But at the same time, I'm not going to ask for your ID. Well, I mean, the vetting people, I don't do every single interview. But we're not going to ask for your full legal name. We're not going to ask for your driver's license. We're not going to take a picture of your license plate. We're not going to draw a vial of your blood to do a DNA test. The vetting interview is about what kind of man you are, and also we are going to ask questions about things. And if there is a contradiction, if we find that out, we're going to be able to, well, we're going to talk about that. It's more about what kind of man you are, because we could have an application process which is just okay, give me your full legal name, address, and a picture of your driver's license. You know a lot about that person, but you don't know what kind of person they are. And you could have a bad person who just hasn't been convicted of a certain crime,
Yes.
and
There's lots
or
of those.
it doesn't tell you what you need to know. The vetting process has a lot to do with the nuances. It has a lot to do with what kind of person you are, with how you speak, how you act, how you handle yourself, how you embody the beliefs you claim to uphold, how well can you explain them. There's a lot going on, and you can do it while maintaining your anonymity. We've figured it out. It works. There's very many stages. There's things how it works, and vetting lasts longer than some people think it does. But it
Yeah.
is a process, and it does protect the membership, and it also protects you from us and us from you. Because I can't, obviously, I can very reliably say that the organization is in good hands. But if there ever was anybody who was vetting you who didn't have your best interest in mind, we would be able to catch that. Right?
Yeah.
Again, there's checks and balances and ways for us to salvage situations if anything does go wrong, because I care. There you go.
Yeah, no, I think without a doubt in my mind, the vast majority is completely people that are not feds. Could have one gotten through as possible, but like everyone there, I mean, I meet people's families. I've had no bad experience with members, no like weirdos, which celebrity, it sucks sometimes, being a little famous,
It
you have someone
happens.
acting weird, especially if they're like well-meaning. You don't want to be like a dick, but no one's been like fucking creepy, weird. Like I've just been shocked how like normal men working together. I think you do expect people to give some back too. It's not like you just go
Yeah.
take. It's about building, giving. I think that goes back to the question of where's the funding? Where's the funding? You have to pay your own way. It's like, you have to come up with some money,
Yeah.
right? Is that correct? There's no one like funding it. You have to like do things yourself.
No, we don't accept donations. And some people have actually asked me in the aftermath of the action, they say, how can I donate to the organization? And I don't want you to. I don't want you to. You can donate your time, donate your sweat, donate
Yeah.
your efforts. That's what's most valuable to me, because we can't have a system where a bunch of people, and frankly, we would attract people perhaps who have a lot of money to donate. And then the type of
Buy their
action
way
we
in.
did on the 4th would become reliant. I would need the money of those donors to do it because they would be
Yeah.
paying for the Metro cards. They would be paying for the trucks. They would be paying for the campsite. They would be paying for certain essential things. And then I could run into a situation where I want to say something that they don't like, or I want to go somewhere that they don't want to. And then they say, well, I'm not going to pay for that. And now we're in a really tough situation where who's actually in charge of the group, right? Kind of the same thing kind of happened with the government. So, right,
Those J's.
yeah, well, I want there to be a legitimate authority in the organization and I make these decisions because, where am I at the march? I'm at the front. If anything happens to anybody at the march, it happens to me first, right? I'm the first one in and the last one out in all those situations, right? And I am not in any way distanced from being downstream of my decisions, and that's right. That's how it should be. That's how leaders should operate. But if decisions are being made by donors, they're not being made by organizers. And those donors are safe no matter what happens, right? And they're also thinking about the security of their investment and not necessarily the security of the membership or the security of our goals. So that's why we don't accept public donations. I don't feel like that was the question that was asked. What was the question?
Well, yeah, well, that was not the original question. I just went and asked the funding because I saw people asking that on Twitter.
It's
like, how is it
people
funded?
show
And I was
up
pretty
and-
sure, to me, it seemed like everyone's paying their own way, which you do
Yeah.
that if you're passionate about something. I'd done jujitsu and wrestling when I had no money. You pay your own way there. It's what you do when you're passionate about something. You find
you
a way.
show up and you have a $20 bill in your hand. It's not that complicated.
No, exactly.
Everything we
You
do
show up.
scales. And they're like, oh, they rode the train. Feds rode the train. It's
$2.
Like, normal people ride the train. The train in DC isn't just for feds. Fun fact. You can ride it. It's public.
Yeah.
It's actually great.
If you ever do allow donations, you should do anonymous only. That way you don't run into that problem. I had someone try to buy a good
we'd
chunk
have
of money
some
into
way
my
of
podcast, and they want a little bit of creative control. And they word it very, you're like, wow, this is a real thing.
In the meantime, just super chat Jake Shields.
Yeah,
You
so
wanna
for
contribute
now,
stuff.
no, but exactly. So if you do donations, you don't want, they do that with all these podcasts. They come in and everywhere, media, everything. They come in with this money and it comes, if you can talk about things a little bit, it's just a little bit of control.
Yeah.
You just got to do things slightly different.
Not a fan.
No, exactly. You don't want people controlling you. Okay, we still have,
can't be
appreciate
bought.
that. Got a bunch of super chats. Let's see. Where is this one? Where was I at? Did I lose where I'm at? It's a Catholic immigrant who came here legally from Poland years ago and became a citizen. Do you see the person as part of Patriot Front? Like, could they be part of Patriot, I guess? If they're a Catholic immigrant who came here legally from Poland years ago.
Yeah.
Became a citizen.
Maybe
So he's a citizen,
I
right?
I don't know you. Well, so first of all, for practical reasons, you would have to be a citizen. Because if you are an American citizen, and whether or not you're American or not, if you're a citizen, and you do something and you run afoul of the law, even for something small, like the tiniest little thing, which is unlikely in the organization, but it could theoretically happen, if you're not a citizen, especially if you're a nationalist and you're a European citizen but not an American citizen, they will deport you quickly, which is funny. If only they did that for everybody else.
Criticize Israel, be a nationalist, you're out.
Yeah, I know. They'll get rid of you. So I don't want to be in a situation where if any of our members get so much as a traffic ticket in pursuit of our goals, that they will be deported and potentially taken away from friends and family, and I don't want that. But obviously, if you're a foreigner, it's okay. But in the situation where this person is Polish, if you are a citizen for practical purposes and safety purposes, I believe Europeans can assimilate within a lifetime. Right? Does that mean it's instant? Does that mean it's easy? Does that mean it doesn't take sacrifice? Of course it does. It means all of these things and more. But, if you're thinking, I really want to be an American, I want to believe in American things, and I want to supercharge my assimilation, maybe joining Patriot Front is one of the best ways you could do it, right?
Yeah.
You said he is a citizen now. You have a lot of stories about European migrants coming to the country, and they throw themselves right into, and maybe it's a little exploitative, but they throw themselves right into the battle lines of the Civil War, or Custer's 7th Cavalry was full of Europeans from almost every country. The Texan Revolution, the men at San Jacinto, the final battle of the Texan Revolution, were from almost every Western European country, right? So I think in a lot of ways, America is a pan-European nation, and one of the best ways for Europeans to assimilate is to fight for the nation's cause, right? So give it a shot. The vetting team will find out.
Yeah, right.
The vetting team will handle it. We'll arrange the meeting.
All right. We still have a bunch more. Let's see. This is very similar to the question we already had, but I'll ask it anyways.
For sure.
Could you clarify what information is collected during applications for someone holding clearance? A leak would ruin careers. So yeah, I guess
Yeah,
how are you
we
stopping a
will
leak?
keep your identity safe. We don't document things that again, I can't say everything. It's a proprietary process, right? But if you're worried, and you don't want to put anything in an application, and you don't have to, could it impact things? Maybe. My advice is be honest and make
Mm,
sure your own OPSEC and your personal life is okay. And that's, whenever people get doxxed, in most cases, I'm talking 90% plus of cases, it's basic social media insecurity. It's because they
yeah.
posted the wrong thing to Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And that sort of thing. So in that situation, you start right now. If you are not a member of Patriot, you are responsible for your own security. And
Mm,
while applying and while looking into the organization, you are also still responsible. And if you are interested, if you're supportive of the organization, I care about your security. Keep all that in mind. Just also do your best to be honest. Is there nuance in that? Yes. Will you need to take some initiative in
yes.
figuring it out? Probably. But I believe in you.
Yeah. And obviously not for everyone, but you do have like job training. People help each other get jobs.
Yes.
That's what I love,
And
that you built this whole community and network to help each other. And networks and
yes.
community are crucial.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly, about that person who sent the chat or whatever,
Mm,
but this is just a general thing. We don't recruit police officers. Anybody who works for, obviously works for the FBI, CIA, ATF, ADL,
you don't want
any
any
other
ATF
member.
members?
No ATF members. I think we had one or two guys who were previous employees of the TSA, which they're not actually as powerful as some people think. So that's not a big deal.
They just like grab your balls occasionally and
It's fine. It's fine. Not a big
yeah,
deal.
whatever.
Not the most powerful people in the country. But yeah, again, you're not allowed if you remember there's anything like that. Even if you're a former police officer, usually that's not okay. Almost
Interesting.
always that's not okay. If somebody was like, oh, I was a cop for 3 months 10 years ago, it's like, maybe we'll look at it. But anything short of that. But
Yeah,
anyways,
that
what
gets
else?
interesting because a lot of police are patriots, but you don't want that type of infiltration.
Well, it's not just so, and I mean, we've had people who were police officers, and I think they're genuine. I think, and
Hmm.
obviously, I don't always take somebody for their word, but I mean, I think they actually believe in what we're doing. They actually didn't want to harm anybody and all those things,
Hmm.
and they're just like small town cops, and I want to join and meet up with people, and it's like, I'm denying you for your own sake.
Yeah.
Because even if you're obviously your life would be in the same reason we don't recruit active duty military. There's plenty of people who apply and they're active duty in the military and they're probably true believers and they want to help out and they like what we're doing. It's like, I want you to get your benefits. I want you to get your full service in the military. I want you to go home and be able to use the GI Bill and all these other things to your heart's
Could they
content,
take
right?
that from them?
So if you do certain things while you are a member of the military, including joining certain organizations that they don't like, which isn't super well defined, and there is a process, and you can fight that in their military courts, and it's messy. They
Yeah.
can potentially give you a lesser than honorable discharge, which might impact how much of your
Yeah.
benefits that you get. It's a very complicated process. I'm not super informed on it,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's also why we don't accept active duty military. It's for your safety. It's like, I like you as a person. I think you're a good person. Do your thing, get your benefits, work in your career, serve the nation in your own way, and then maybe get back to us later. And
Yeah.
in the case where there's a police officer who maybe has a heart of gold, bless his heart, do your thing. Try not to be made immoral by the system. But it's for me. It's not me. It's you. Right. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause I used to have a bunch of friends who were police officers in San
Yeah.
Francisco. A lot of them ended up walking away after the BLM stuff. It just got
Yeah.
so ridiculous, how they were told to force the law, like don't mess with black people unless it's like a violent crime. It's just
And even
absurd.
then, they have to kill you first before you can fight back.
You know something that pissed me off? My friend said, I don't think he meant it. He goes, yeah, when the first thing, if someone gets shot, the first thing they ask, are they white or black? And if they say white, everyone's like, oh, they get like so happy. And that kind of pissed me off. I get why they're happy because, no riots. But it's like, okay, so you're fucking happy if you shoot a white person?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not
Fucking
not
pissed me off.
not the best standard to have, in my opinion.
No,
I
I
don't
can
like it
get
when white
why
people
they
do.
feel that way, but that's just, isn't that terrible at the police department? Or, oh, if I shoot a white person, no big deal, they can get away with it. If it was a black person, oh no, we're about to have riots.
And there's almost a point now. Obviously, if anybody, regardless of race, this is me being egalitarian. If anybody is trying to kill somebody or stab somebody or burn down a building or whatever, and a cop runs up and shoots them, that's kind of okay. I mean, obviously circumstances permitting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if it's an unlawful shooting, I think they should be a little bit worried about shooting a white person.
Yes.
They should be worried about white people getting upset. I think actually they should be the most.
And maybe we
worried
should
about
be
white
upset in
people.
these situations.
Because these
Something
are
I don't
supposed
like.
to be our institutions.
Yeah, white people, we look at every situation individually, as we should, and we break
Yes.
down, was it a valid or not? And unfortunately, a lot of other races don't. They look at it and they're like, oh, God was innocent, shot him for no reason. And it puts us in a tricky situation. Like, I don't
It
think we
doesn't
should
matter
do
if a
that,
black
but
person
maybe
took
we do
revenge
need a
on
little
that
more
person.
outrage when it's an unjust shooting against a white person.
Well, that's a general thing with government. I think, the authorities should be a little scared of the people. And that's not me saying I'm trying to scare anybody, but the general premise of government and the reason that the Second Amendment exists, again, I'm not endorsing any violence, is that there should be, if you're a representative, just like I'm a representative of my own constituency, right? I can tell you from my own experience, if I went crazy out of the way, right? The guys, well, they would just leave the organization in that case. I don't think
Yeah.
they would actually lynch me or anything, hopefully. But, you should be worried about mistreating the people that you're
Yes.
in charge of. You should be
You have
worried
to
about
always stay up in
mishandling
that. You
the
can never
authority that
get
has been given
comfortable.
to you.
Yeah, you
And
should never be able to get comfortable, right? Like, you can't just think,
It's-
oh, I'm the
it's-
leader now. That could change.
Exactly. So I think police should be a little bit more worried about disparaging white people. So if you're a police officer and you're not worried about that, start worrying.
No, they
That sounds
should.
right.
It's just because black people have had these big riots and done that, and we've just been like, oh, they shot a white person. Guess we're gonna do nothing. And maybe in the mix, the black people get too crazy over it, and we need to be a little more angry. But I'm
Yes.
not gonna lie, I kind of liked it in Waco, and a few of those guys got smoked that were trying to raid their house.
No comment.
Watching those. What's that? Yeah. Okay, where are we at? In order to attract white moderates, should nationalists emphasize statistics more? For example, immigrants, welfare rates, crime stats, decline of whites as share of the population.
I'm not a massive statistics guy. There's some people who make their whole messaging about statistics. I could maybe talk about statistics more. I'll be honest. I don't follow all the numbers. There's very good places for that. I'm familiar with the White Papers Policy Institute. You can look them up. They do a lot of statistics stuff. I've read some of their stuff. It's very good. Should we do more of that? I mean, maybe, but I think there's a time and place for statistics.
Yeah.
When I'm giving a speech, I'm biased. I'm biased, right? But I think my I-Day speech, Independence Day speech up there on National Union Station, would not have been improved by me rattling off a lot of numbers.
No.
Right? I think, our banners and our slogans would not be... First of all, a lot of them are kind of temporary. Now, a lot of the bad things stay statistically bad, but the precise numbers and how relevant they are does start aging, kind of like bananas. It's not super perennial, and I like a very perennial message. I like a message about America and statements which, could be perhaps just as true and just as, inspiring 100 years ago or 100 years from now. But are statistics valuable? Sure. But I don't think necessarily they would replace the existing slogans of the organization. But I do think there's a place for them, and that would be generally on social media in more articulate scenarios where you can actually put a block of text in front of somebody and they might read it. Unlike a yard sign or a speech, which again, I don't think the speech would have been improved by me.
13% of the population.
It's just I like speaking to greater things, but using statistics, absolutely. If you are on social media and Patriot Front guys are on social media, then that is certainly one of your rhetorical appeals. I think there's a lot to it, but also there's the idea of because I think you can open yourself up to certain traps when you say that, oh, well, these foreigners are bad because they commit all these crimes. Well, then it's like, well, what about the ones that don't? It's like, so there are some, believe it or not, there's even some black people that don't commit crimes. I know, I was surprised too.
I've never met one.
But, the problem is, it's not about whether or not they're good or bad people. It's about whether or not they're my people. And that isn't a statistic, because 0% of foreigners are my people, and 100% of my people are my people, right? That doesn't make for a good statistic. But I do think you can get dragged into it and I think I said this in another video, it's like, I'm not fighting for, the white people, the Native Americans, I believe we're Native. I'm not fighting for my people because we are the most law-abiding, or because we pay the most taxes, or because we jaywalk the least, right? Or because whatever. I'm fighting them for them because they're mine. It's me. It's my people. That's why I'm fighting for us. Because if you get into statistics, it's like, oh, well, why don't you just decide to get replaced by the Chinese instead? No, it wouldn't matter if other groups, weren't
the
committing
Chinese
any
do
crimes.
less crime, exactly. So that could totally kill that argument. It's like you want your people, exactly, and that's
So there has to be something greater than the statistics. But can you use them sometimes when the shoe fits? Absolutely. Give it a shot.
Yeah, no, I agree with that answer. So there is something real to the statistics and stuff, but it's also your whole point is it's your people. It's not from the statistics of it. Just like
Yeah.
a lot of black people want to be around black people, and that's totally fine. And they're not hated on for it. They're not constantly treated like an enemy for it. But
Yes.
for some reason, if a white person wants to be around their people or have an all-white club, they're the most evil man ever.
Yes.
That's just it's so
Call
bizarre.
the National Guard. Drop the bombs. Make
Yeah,
it
this
stop.
is getting serious. Okay, where was I? I think I lost the things. The right spot. How much non-white ancestry is too much in a DNA terms? Like 25% too much? Also, can a Jew who is religiously Jewish and is Christian join the? I think he meant ethnically Jewish, but
No.
Christian join the organization. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say no on that one. And he also says, can a white Nazi Muslim join? Do they have those?
White? No. So let's say safely no. So I've seen somebody denied for being 10% Jewish before. So less than that, I think you're dealing with a different scenario there. If somebody has never even met or heard of their ancestor who had that foreign admixture, that's not that big of a deal. The only exceptions PF has ever made in its history that even get close to a quarter are instances where somebody has like tribal nations ancestry, and I mean like Cherokee or Blackfoot, and not tribes like of Israel. Unless you're
Not
one of
those
those Christians
tribes.
that thinks white people are the tribes of Israel, which is it's your religious opinion. So that's the only case where we've even gotten close, and you're talking like 1 in 1,000, maybe one in even more than 1,000 cases. But there's never been a case of a member who was a quarter black or a quarter Jewish or whatever. And now with Hispanics, you could be a quarter Hispanic, but Hispanic is a cultural group, right? There are some Hispanics who are 0% Indian or black and
Yeah,
100%
like they're
European.
super white looking Hispanic. So yeah, it's complicated.
So when we get somebody who says they're Hispanic, it's like, well, let's look into that. And still, you can be denied for being culturally foreign, right? If you're a white guy, but you sag your pants and you listen to rap music, and you're eating the pineapple soaked in Kool-Aid, you might you might be 100%, you might be pure Bavarian phenotype, as they say, but you're still going to get denied. Just the contrary, right? So, short answer, the latter two cases, an absolute denial. In the first case, we'd have to look at it. It's a situation where we have a proprietary vetting process, and if you really think in good faith that you might be applicable, just apply. I mean, the worst case scenario is you don't.
So it's a little bit open. Well, it's funny. I'm good friends with the Diaz brothers, who are super
limited.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
the Diaz brothers are super white looking, but they have a Mexican last name, so everyone just calls them Mexican. But I think they mostly
we've talked about this
identify
before,
as
yeah.
white. So I just tell them just be Mexican, dude. You guys have the hardest fan base. Just be Mexican.
Yes.
But yeah,
Sure.
right? Because one's like, we look the same, don't we? I'm like, oh yeah, true.
Yeah.
So why you keep calling me Mexican? But so gays, it gets complex. You look at it depending on the race, how they look, if they're speaking Ebonics.
I try, the look test isn't everything, right? Because, I don't want to deny somebody just because they look funny. You can be a totally white guy and you can just look funny, and I believe, some people who look funny can still serve the nation, funnily enough. But yeah, we look at a lot of things. It's about culture and race and ethnicity. And even then, if you do have foreign admixture, how connected to it are you? How much of your identity is it actually a part of? If you're 10% something else, right? Let's look at that. But I'm not going crazy and like pulling out calipers, in skull charts whenever I see a new member,
individual,
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, you spent 10 minutes too long in the sun. I'm going to kick you out.
Yeah.
You're looking a little dark. No, I don't do that.
So for me, here's somebody maybe disagree a little bit. I live in a country where I see I want all Americans to be better people. You're clearly a white-only group. Would you encourage Mexicans and black people to start their own group that encourages people to be better, behave better? I guess there are a little bit of it of some of the black groups. There are some black groups that are black nationalist groups that don't do drugs, don't say the N-word.
Yeah.
Black nationalists.
But they
and
also
don't
run
like
around with guns and say they want to kill white people. So that
Yeah,
they kind
so
of
that
lose
might
me
be
on
true.
that one.
Yeah, I would agree on that part.
But I mean,
yeah,
I think everybody should do better. I think the world would be a better place if everybody had virtues of a civic and a personal variety alike. But and I mean, I could say that, I wish nobody did drugs. I wish nobody ever hurt anybody else. That would be wonderful things. But the world exists, and resources, including time and my life, are limited. They are limited, valuable things, and I only have one group of people that I have the time to represent and dedicate my life to in this life, and I've chosen
yeah.
it to be my people. And if other races and groups want to take example from that and they want to do the best for theirs, then sure, absolutely. And I think putting your own ethnic interest first, a smart man says that everybody is a nationalist for the people they actually care about, and I happen to agree. And I think a lot of people do that. But at the same time, do I want other foreign groups making nationalist organizations in this country that are laying claim to it? No. I think you should be trying to fight for your own homelands. I don't think a bunch of, Mexicans should be setting up shop in, Utah and saying that actually Utah is going to be the new Mexico.
Fair.
It isn't. At least not over, not unless over my dead body, right?
What would be your thoughts if someone had something similar to Patriot Front, but included all people, but tried encouraging everyone to be a better citizen? Obviously, it's not what you're doing, but would you think it was a negative or positive thing if someone was doing that?
I would want that group to recruit everybody except for white people so they don't infringe upon my recruiting. I mean, sure, but the problem is try it, right? That would be my answer. Try it and see how quickly it messes up, because people have a lot of different, and I mean, even if you get everybody to agree with the fact that, oh, well, I don't like what the Jews are doing and I believe in civic virtue, you get all those people in a room together, everybody but Jews, and there's still a lot of divides there. There's still a lot of things to argue about. And, you can think, and there's not even nothing, evil about it, but you can think that everybody's getting along and having a good time, and totally we can unite about this. But you get all those people working together, and you're going to quickly realize that all these different nationalities, there's problems. There's problems, and I think that organizations work when there's something homogenous about them.
Yeah, I think overall I agree. I think it's better. I think it's possible to have things work. Smaller scale usually, like with the, high level military fight gyms, but that's not like at the large scale with the amount of people in our country. So the bigger it gets, the harder it is to keep people together. Okay, let's see a few more. What are your thoughts on abortion? Isn't it good because it keeps the black population down? I'm confused. Why does Hitler being German matter? Well, that matters because we're in America, but should every ancient figure... Wait, hold on. What's he saying here? Should every ancient figures because that not America? I don't quite understand that part. So basically, he's asking your thoughts on abortion, and he's saying, yeah.
There's a 3 for 1. So my thoughts on abortion, isn't that good because so I don't adhere to the opinion that babies should be torn apart in any situation. I think it's bad when it happens to anybody. I don't care what they look like. I don't care who their parents are. I just think that's it's just kind of a demonic opinion. It's just kind of maniacal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand what some people are trying to say. That
I understand the argument he's making,
a lot of
but
crimes, and if there were less of them, but do you want to solve that problem by tearing babies apart? Like, don't you sound like the bad guy? What are you talking about? So I believe abortion is bad in any circumstance. Now, when I talk about abortion, I'm talking about it from the standpoint of my people. Do I care about abortions that happen in, the Ivory Coast or in, Indonesia as much as I care about them that happen in my country? No, I don't. Do I think that they're still bad? Yes. But I need to prioritize fixing my house, my country, my nation, my people. And that's what I want to do. And, you can talk about solving demographic issues. I don't think tearing babies apart is one of the ways we should solve our demographic problem. I think there's a lot of better ways to do it. There's a lot of better ways that you can go around removing a lot of people from the country that shouldn't be here, and even creating incentives or other ways so that I'm not totally against contraception. I might disagree with some Catholics there. I think if somebody is a very, very bad lifestyle, very much not somebody who should be reproducing, maybe they should have the means available to make sure that they don't, right? Without tearing babies apart. So that's answer question one. The question two was, does it matter that Hitler was German? To Hitler, it did a lot, I think.
Mattered a lot to him.
Yeah, so separating Hitler from Germany is actually not really reasonable, if that's what you're trying to get at. And I don't necessarily have a lot of opinions about Hitler that I'm trying to make like that's the standard. Everybody should agree with me about Hitler on these subsets. But I think one of the things I can reasonably state is that Hitler was a German nationalist. I know, controversial. But he wasn't fighting for like a totally global sort of, all races, everybody from every background can join in with these. I do think he was fighting for his specific people in a specific context, trying to overturn or bring justice to injustices he thought had happened after the First World War and so on. Does it matter that Hitler was German? Yeah, of course. And the third question was, just because they're not American, should other... I don't... He's talking about like figures from European history that are older, like...
Oh, I see. Because they're European... That is an interesting question. I see, I get it. I didn't...
Yeah, should we discard Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great and all these other people because and
that's a good question.
King Richard because they're not American? No, I don't think we should. And now we can learn from history, but there's an element of incorporating something into your identity, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ancestry that I have that goes pre-Columbian ancestry that goes to Europe, but it's not my national identity. And, I have such a wealth of American national heroes, so many people who bear my nation's legacy, and I am a part of that direct inheritance that I have chosen, like I said earlier in the show, to be a counterweight. I'm going to be totally American. I don't read books that are, now I could, I'm open to it in the future, but I don't read books that are not written by Americans, about America, right? I prioritize my national interest and my native ideology in everything I do. And perhaps, there's, you don't have to do it exactly like I do, but again, I'm a counterweight, right? I'm an example. I'm trying to set a standard. So yes, it matters. And,
you have all this obscure American literature, and I don't think either one of us are saying like Hitler's terrible, Hitler's this. It's just not what you're talking about. It's not what you're incorporating in, it's not the ideology. It's not what you're using, and it doesn't make sense to. Like, there's things I like about him, banning usury. I'm not going to pretend like I think that's bad, I'm not going to act like resting the Rothschilds was the worst thing ever, but it just doesn't make sense to, like, include that in your ideology and your talking points. That's my opinion. I think it's smarter not to. Doesn't mean you're telling your guy he was bad. You're not telling him what to think about him. It makes no sense for you to bring up subjects.
It would just be so easy to just get sucked into making everything about relitigating the 1930s and 40s. It's been beaten to death. The horse is no longer just dead. It has been reduced to atoms, right? Like, we need to move on in some ways, There are certain people who just make it their entire hobby, like their life's goal, just to talk more and more about World War II and the circumstances surrounding it. It's just
we don't want to be like the Jews. We don't want to be like the Jews, but the opposite.
No, I mean, because
the Holocaust. They take the opposite version of a Jew.
Our nation, there's an argument to be made about the horseshoe theory there, but our nation doesn't exist in a history book. Our nation doesn't exist in black and white photos and World War II hype reels of bombers swooping down into farm fields, right? Like, our nation is today. It's the people, right? We don't belong in a history museum. We don't belong in a bunch of books and artifacts to be dug up with metal detectors, right? Our nation is the people, and our people's interest is timeless, and part of it being timeless is today. That's what I say.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense. Let's see. I'm terrible with names. Carl Erling Holland, Norwegian Viking national team. Get your blessings to raid and defeat the majority Mongol English national team for this. I guess something about soccer. I don't follow soccer. For Saturday's World Cup match. Thoughts?
He wants me to endorse, the Norwegian team against the English team.
Yeah, I don't follow hockey, so I'm not, or soccer.
I feel like I've met more English nationalists in the last few years than I have Norwegian nationalists. I'm gonna take the No Brothers Wars approach. I hope that all of the non-English players in the English team get the flu, a mildly uncomfortable flu that just renders them incapable of playing before the big game, and then and then only the white people are on the field, and then they all have fun, and then it ends in a tie. That's how I answered this question. There you go.
Yeah, fair. Yeah,
Very
that's not a sport I
diplomatic.
watch. Patriot Front has dominated the news cycle for 3 days now. Flawless victory. I mean, Thomas Hennessy. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. It's Patriot Front. It's been by far your guys' biggest PR win. I mean, you guys have had some other ones, but this is, and I'm seeing a lot more positive this time. You know, the people that are called the Fed jacking or getting, and just to be clear, when it first came out, everyone's calling feds. I might have done it, embarrassingly, because everyone's just repeating the same thing. You can fall into groupthink. We're all gonna be guilty of it.
Yeah.
But I think if you're still saying it at this point, I think I posted your speech. I'm like, watch this speech. And if you think this is a Fed, you're like retarded. Like, come on.
What's the motive? I mean, we've talked about it. We've talked about it so many times. But if I was a Fed, why? What's the point? Am I trying to make conservatives look bad? I didn't say anything about Trump. And I like how some people are still saying it's like, they showed up perfectly. I think Alex Jones said this. Like, they just so happen to show up whenever it's convenient. It's like, it's America 250. In DC. Why were we there? Why was anybody there? Why is everybody there? It's the 4th of July. What are you talking about?
How do they afford those outfits? How did they afford to get there? How did anyone afford to get there? How does anyone afford anything?
There were hundreds of thousands of people I think. I don't know exactly. But there were lots of people. Why were we there? Because everybody else is there. Why are they there? Because it's obvious. These are silly questions.
When you're passionate about something, you find a way to get there. That's what people don't understand. It's not that complicated. You find a way. And that's Tom, where's Thomas get all this money? Like, I don't think you have very much money around you. You get by. No. You're not out getting rich off Patriot Front. You'd be doing something else. You're an intelligent guy. I'm sure you can make a lot of money doing a lot of things.
Maybe I could, but the idea that I have, the more money, I know where money comes from. It comes from people who would ideally support me, because I'm not going to take money from people who don't support me. And I believe that the people who support me, or the people that work with me, their money is better spent by themselves than me, right? So the less money I have, the more they do. And I think that trust and faith is much more valuable than its equivalent in currency. And if I ever did need help, if I ever did need, like when I was in jail for a while, then there's money, right? Then money comes into play when I need bail. But I would much rather, bank up on good faith, right, than money itself, because friends are useful in a lot more circumstances, especially circumstances where money can't get you out of, right? And you know what they say about a lot of people with money? They end up with problems that money can't solve.
Mm-hmm. Most people don't have dozens of friends they can call and would help them in a bind without thinking twice. Exactly. It's very fortunate. And I have friends like that, and a lot of people don't. And I know you have a lot of people you can call. They're not going to ask questions. You call for something, they're going to jump in to help you. And most people don't have a single friend that would do that. They have money, but not a single friend that's not going to jump and help them unless they're getting paid.
Exactly. And that's not the culture we have. That's not what America should be about.
And that's what I'm the most impressed about by your organization, to be honest, being around it. That you built this community about helping each other, not for benefit, what's in it for me. It's all about community. And I think that has been a big part of the fall of the white man. I don't know if fall's fair, but like we have slid a little bit, I think. And with the drug addiction, the suicide, we used to have these big communities, big families. And it's like people are separated, they're alone. We need community, you have to have that, people around you helping you, and and you encourage people, they can bring their wives to places, stuff like that. Oh, that reminds me, there was a question, it wasn't a super chat that I had. Someone was asking, what can women do, or is there any version of women that could help?
Yes, so the organization is fraternal, right? The organization is fraternal, and only men can join. However, not only men are involved. So the wives, girlfriends, fiancés, even sometimes sisters, cousins, and mothers of members are involved at our various social events or other ways. If the guys are having, sometimes at the gym, right? At the gym you went to, right? The men are all training on the mats, and the women and children and the people are picnicking outside, right? There's a lot of ways that women can get around, and we had a flag in our march. We had a flag in our recent march in Independence Day at the very front, which was hand sewn. One of our chevron flags was hand sewn by one of the wives of one of the members of the organization. So there's a lot of ways wives can contribute. They can be a part of a community, and I do believe in disparate roles in politics, right? I don't think it's a woman's job to just step forward and do everything a man would do in every situation. And no offense to the fairer sex, but I think the circumstances of our Independence Day march would be unbefitting many women, that at least any that I would know. And but there are ways to contribute, and if you are like-minded and you are a female and you want to help the organization, get your husband to join. And if your husband doesn't want to join, then he's not as manly as he should be. So find a new husband. Yeah, apparently. And if not that, then maybe somebody else. And if not that, then you can safely, maybe if it's applicable to you, you can share or interact with our content. And there's other things that the organization does that you can be supportive of. But that would be what I would say.
Yeah, I think it's important to have men's only spaces where men are doing certain things, but it's also
Yes.
important to include the wife and kids and stuff so they're not
Yes.
totally isolated. And I think you do a good job of that.
Well, it
Like, but
also just grants us a lot of flexibility, especially with what we do, like that massive demonstration, which was very valuable and productive for the reasons aforementioned. But if women and children were there, if a lot of men brought women, we would just not be able to camp everybody out. We would have to have segregated camping locations, segregated bathrooms. Well, I would feel bad making a bunch of women get up at 3 and 4 a.m. and march
exactly.
107 degrees. I don't think, and also I don't want to ever be in a situation where I'm giving orders to somebody else's wife. That's weird.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not how the social order should work.
I
That's
agree.
his job.
I won't coach like women in fighting, or for the most part, occasionally help them. I just think it's weird. I shouldn't be like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be coaching someone else's wife or girlfriend, telling them what to do. That's
Yeah.
not my position. There's all kinds of weird drama, people sleeping together. It's just like, no, I just don't trade. Make it simple. Like, we don't
And
mind being around women, but I just don't want authority over them.
yeah, and I realize that half the nation we're fighting for is women, and I'm totally okay with that. And I'm also fighting for a country that's better for them too. We maintain high standards for the men in our organization, and we demand that they have a certain level of virtue and morality in their personal and private attachments. We've kicked members out for cheating on their wives before. We've kicked members out for mistreating women or anybody before, right? These are standards that we uphold so that whenever I do, and it's frequent, I meet, the wives or girlfriends, fiancés, etc., of members in the organization. I'm happy to interact with them, confident in knowing
Yeah.
that what I'm doing with the men of the nation is also in their interest, and that there's no split
Yes.
interest. I'm not trying to topple anybody.
No, I think we're probably both believers on it's the man's job to do more, to do these things, the things that can put yourself in danger, the marches, the
Yes.
political stuff. But that's not sexist. Like, we want to do more, not less. It's not not a woman's part. We're not trying to. Women should be included in things, but in a different manner. And we're trying to
Yes,
act like it's
equal and
exactly the
opposite.
same. Yeah, we're not the same. Yeah, equal and opposite. And also, like you said, telling someone else's wife or girlfriend what to do, that's just bizarre.
That would create a lot of friction that I would really be happy to avoid.
Yeah, I don't want someone like bossing my girl around. That's just like,
No,
that's
yeah,
just
and I
weird.
don't think any man would,
No.
or anybody, But anyways, we have a situation. If you're a female and you're a woman and you want to support, either interact with the content, get one of the men in your life to join, but just be supportive and live a good life. Live
Cool.
like you should, and pursue the proper morals and virtues that you think are valuable.
Okay, we've gone a while, so I'll read what's left. If you guys
Sure.
have any last minute questions, get them in right away, because but we have a few more. We'll get through these. Thomas, could you please touch on the fraternal nature of the organization, how religion is handled among the memberships, and what you choose to and why you choose to do it that way?
Right. So religion among the organization officially is secular, and secular just means that there's no official religion. We don't enforce that anybody have any specific theological beliefs. It doesn't mean that we're anti-religion, and it doesn't even necessarily mean that we're not religious. But the boundary of belief within the organization is that you have to have. If you don't have to be religious, I'm personally not a member of any organized religion, but if you do have religious beliefs, they have to be, considerably culturally aligned or native to Europe. So that includes, obviously the Christian faith, and you can say, oh, well, the Christian faith came from the Middle East, but it pretty much immediately, as after a few
Yeah.
years, went straight to Europe, and largely it's based in Europe, and all of the denominations that started in Europe. And or there are members who are members of the older, more polytheistic European faiths, right? They're Norse pagans or things like that, and that is also totally fine. And then you have people who are just broadly not religious, whether they are more atheistic, but atheist is kind of a political thing that
Yeah.
doesn't really exist in the practical circumstance within Patriot Front. But largely, it's people who are agnostic, or maybe they're culturally Christian, or maybe they very much like the pagan mythos, but they're not necessarily sure on the exact. They don't believe in the divinity of it, but they think it's a valuable story, so they're kind of agnostic but kind of pagan. Or people who are the same way about Christianity, where maybe they like the scripture and they like the teachings, but the jury's still out on certain things. So those people all work together. We do our best to facilitate religious expression. If you actually look in the photos from our recent action, you'll find guys wearing, Christian crosses around their neck, and Mjolnir, Thor's hammer necklaces. If you look through our media, you'll find people doing, ceremonies and gatherings expressing both religious faiths. And obviously, nobody is. You're not treating anybody differently in that
Yes.
case. If you're a Christian in PF and you're staffing a team somewhere, you can't say, okay, I only want Christians, right? You don't do that because we are
So the
one
pagans and
united
Christians
brotherhood.
have to coexist and work together. See, I like that.
You have to work with that.
There's a group that's trying to push and divide between the two, like Adam Greenberg. He doesn't like me. He's constantly attacking me. It's a very small group of pagans, but they just
Yeah.
push in hatred, trying to push a division. I think it might be an op because he's done some other like weird things. And they're just
Religious
trying to push
infighting,
this hatred
yeah.
and division.
It's not a problem that the organization has to deal with, and I look
Yep.
back and I think that's a very proud American tradition because the founders were looking back 100 years prior to Europe, and Europe was bled dry by the wars of the Reformation, where countries were leveling cities over how many sacraments you were celebrating or worshiping or whether or not Christ was made by Mary or he always existed or
Yes.
whether the Pope is allowed to do this, like small religious matters just tore Europe apart.
Yep.
And the founders, the religious freedom that the founders were talking, and of course I got into this with Patrick Bet-David years ago. It was not we love the entire world. It was a matter of how do we prevent our country from being torn apart 100 different ways by sectional religious disputes. And I think Patriot Front does a very good job of honoring that tradition, and we have had no schismatic religious internecine wars, just like the United States.
No, I agree because I was around pagans there, pagans up in Idaho. They were great. But then I get these pagans online constantly attacking me. If that was the only pagans I'd seen, I'd be like, fuck these parasites. But the ones I've been around in real life didn't act like that. That's what I'm like,
Everybody,
is this
yeah.
like an op or is this like...
Everybody gets along in PF because the Christians are very pagan and the pagans are very Christian, as one of the men told me once.
Yeah, you learned... Oh,
It
before I
doesn't make
forget,
sense unless you think about it.
a question for myself I want to ask.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on Dan Blazarian's campaign? I assume you're going for him over Randy Fine, I hope?
I think he should definitely give Randy Fine a run for his money, considering where Randy Fine's money probably comes from. More than probably.
Not
let's say.
America.
No, and I think anybody who has that amount of interest for Israel should be challenged in the polls. I think that if you're going to be a rabid if you're going to be Jewish, first of all, I don't think you should be in office in the United States. But I do think there should be challenges that should exist. There should be campaigns run as acts of protest and as acts of representing the contrary opinion that are running counter to all these interests in Congress. And I hope it's a tough race for Mr. Fine. I hope he has a real burdensome time. I hope it ages him prematurely and convinces him to retire.
Yeah, no, I think obviously you can make critiques of Dan, but I think he's clearly, anyway, you look at it, the better opponent than Randy Fine, and he's had so little support, and that's been very interesting to me. People now they're fighting, like how Nick Fuentes early on was throwing shade against them, like seeing stuff like that, like no endorsements by Candace Owens, Tucker. You have Randy Fine. It's like, okay, interesting. It shows people don't want change, and Dan will certainly make Congress fun. It's not going to be easy to make changes, but he'll go in there and shake things up.
No, and at this point, it's why not, right? At this point, how much people could be worried about Bill Zarian. Oh, well, he doesn't have a lot of experience in being a congressman. Okay, right?
Better than what we have there.
And everybody has their own opinions, but I think there's a big matter about do your work and don't try to stop other people from doing their work. And if you have something better, then do something better. But everybody's trying their tactics. Everybody's implementing their own plans, and it's just too easy for so many people to try to focus on everybody else's plan, and everybody's focusing on what everybody else is doing, trying to get them to stop, and it's just a big circular, maelstrom of nonsense. There's so much work that needs to be done. Actually, everybody can try their own hand at their own tactics and their own plans without having to dedicate their entire life. I mean, Patriot Front will go through all of our messages, go through my speeches, go through our Telegram channel. How many denouncements of other nationalists or other groups or whatever do you see? Not a
Never.
zilch.
I've never seen you denounce anyone.
Because I don't need to, because if I want to prove that I'm better than somebody, I'm just going to try to be better. And you can't tear these people down, right? You could say, and I'm sure the people who are saying, things about Dan Bilzerian and whatever, it's not going to get him to stop. I think he's a bit more courageous than that. I think he's a bit more motivated and determined to tend to be upset by those things. So what's the point, right? Do you think that you're just going to say some mean things and the person will be like, oh,
Yeah.
you're right, person who doesn't like me anymore?
Yeah, right.
Be constructive. Try to guide by example, if by nothing else. That would be my advice to everybody.
Yeah, and I think he's in it for the right reasons. He has a lot more to
Yeah.
lose than gain. Lots of these politicians are in it for the wrong reason. And back to what you're saying,
Yeah.
we need to all do different things. We don't all have the same part we're playing. We all need to try to do something to make the country better. You have
Right.
Patriot Front, you have that.
Everything
I
should
do.
be mixed up.
We
I
all
mean,
try
like
to do things.
yeah. The elections and all that stuff. I mean, you need more types of candidates running. You need to break certain norms. You need to broaden the landscape of what is normal and what is possible. And I don't know exactly what the polling numbers are like. But even if Dan doesn't win, right, which we could say is possible because Fine is a very, very rich incumbent, which usually they have the big advantage. It's still productive insofar as it kind of breaks down the idea of normalcy of that.
Yeah.
Well, somebody who has very outside of the norm opinions on Jews and Israel and these things can run and can get votes. And you know what? Insofar as I am a believer in democracy, if we're going to have a democracy, if we're going to call it a democracy, right? Which, of course, I believe in a republic and all these things, but a lot of people say we live in a democracy. And if we're going to live in a democracy, then there should be those types of people on the ballot, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, we have to at least try with some different voices, and I think he has a real shot. People are looking past him, but I think he could shake things up. People don't realize how important name recognition is, and
I think there's
whatnot.
a lot of things. Yeah, I wouldn't mind at all. I wouldn't lose sleep over Dan Bilzerian being in Congress. Out of all the things that the Americans have to worry about, I don't think this is one of them. And oh my goodness, what if there's one less Israeli Republican in Congress?
Right.
God, can you imagine the turmoil right now?
And just I would love to watch some of those like Congress hearings when they're in there just going. Dan would just go after these people. He would not hold back. That alone would be worth it. Okay.
I have nothing personally against him, and I wish him the best.
Yeah. Hail Columbia. Support from Alamo Youth Club. I'm not sure Alamo Youth Club. Do you know them?
Not personally.
Well, thanks for the support. Thanks, Guy. I'm a proud member and participated Saturday. This has been such a historic moment. I'm honored to be part of it. If you're watching and you're on the fence, take the leap and join.
There you go.
You.
What that guy said.
Yep. Any opinion on George Lincoln Rockwell?
I think he said a lot of good things. He had, he probably said some things that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. I don't have a full conception of his statements. I don't agree with his messaging style. He used a few more slurs than I do. And obviously the swastikas and the armbands. But I think he was doing that. Of course, we can argue back and forth about how much he was doing for shock value to get, because the news system was very different back in the day. You're talking about a pre-internet time there. But I think the messaging strategy, left a few things to be desired. As far as his actual organization, like the nuts and bolts of it, how it works, I'm really not sure. And I think there's a little bit of it that's a kind of a black box in terms of the day-to-day. So, I could make some organizational critiques, but there's a lot of it. There's a lot of circulation about GLR, which you just don't really know because he was killed before a lot of questions could be answered. But I do think he's very much exists in his time.
Yeah, I don't know too much about him. I need to go look him up more. Who killed him?
He definitely existed in his time, and I do think he was a product of the age that he existed. Not in a bad way, but kind of in a good way. And I do think somebody like him had to exist. And I don't think it was ever practical for him to be president or anything, but he was a very emblematic kind of figure for the civil rights post-World War II, when you still had a lot of people that remembered World War II, right? When a lot of changes were happening in the country, and people think stuff is violent now. I mean, back in the the 60s and 70s, things were way worse. There were anarchists bombing the Capitol. But it's funny, you didn't need fences all over the Capitol and the National Mall in the 70s.
Lots of them were Jewish, the Weather Underground, and didn't go to prison.
Funny about that. But I think too much is set up. Oh well, GLR and these guys were doing this, and that's bad. It's like everything was crazy back then. With the civil rights, the whole country was crazy. So in some ways, they were probably a lot more sane than everybody else.
Yeah.
in some
Was
ways
he
maybe they weren't.
assassinated, or how was he killed?
He was killed. An assassination, you could argue. I believe it was one of his former members, which
So it's
killed
complex.
him.
I'm gonna look into
Um,
this.
there was internal, and there's some debate about who actually did it. Obviously, there's the theories that the Jews killed him, just like there is with everybody.
I
But
guess a good time. Charlie Kirk, what are your thoughts on that? Since now that you mentioned it, someone had
um,
asked that in a question. We're kind
about
of
the
wrap. I have a
actual
few last
about
questions.
what actually happened
The
with
Charlie
Kirk.
Kirk. Do you think there's any Israel involvement, or you have no opinion on that?
I haven't personally reviewed it. I will have to go back and watch everything Candace Owens has said and make up my own mind. I'm not a regular watcher of her show. I think it's possible there was some kind of foul play somewhere, but I also think that it's fully. I mean, the left hated him. I mean, I wasn't the hugest Charlie Kirk fan. I don't think he should have been killed, though. Obvious opinion. But just the basic thought that somebody would want to shoot him with the kind of rhetoric that was out there about him and how public he was and how accessible he was, that's not unthinkable. I mean, I've received enough death threats personally to know that he was more famous than I am. It's not impossible that somebody wanted to kill him bad enough to do it, or to try and possibly succeed. And I also feel like there's just something about social media and the algorithm and the need to have a unique opinion that means that nothing real, nothing ever happens. There has to be some kind of alternative theory to everything, and then alternative theory about that and that and that. And I've heard people say, well, this about the bullet, and actually he was wearing a body armor, and actually this. And I think it's fully possible that somebody got on that roof and shot him. Could something? If there's a reasonable theory about something else that could have happened, and it seems more plausible than the story we got, then I'd be open to hearing it. But I haven't looked into it that far.
Yeah, I'm at about 50-50. I haven't looked at it in detail enough. I
Yeah.
think Israel should automatically be a suspect in any assassination, and there are
They
some
had
things
the
that point
motive.
that way.
They
But
had the
no like
motive.
hard smoking gun. Yeah, they had a motive.
Yeah. Israel had the motive, and just to be safe, I think we should treat it as if they did, and remove Jewish influence from the country, just as a precautionary measure, just
Perfect.
until we figure out what's going on.
Agreed. A couple more questions. This one's like perfect. What is the movement's official position regarding Israel and interference of the Jewish lobby in American politics? I think you kind of just answered that.
Bad. It's bad. I don't like it. Israel. So I don't know, and I've said this. You were reposting clips about me talking about Israel on your show. It's always a good time.
Because I saw people asking you, saying you didn't know the
exactly.
Jews, why I did that. No.
I don't necessarily believe that Israel should be wiped. The state should be wiped off the face of the earth, and everybody in it should be bombed into rubble, which is what Israel believes about their neighbors. Because I want to be better than them. But at the same time, I think Israel should be left to fend for themselves, totally and absolutely. They shouldn't receive a dime or a drop of blood or a bead of sweat from the American people. I think we've given far enough. Actually, we should be asking Israel for reparations.
Yes, I agree.
So add that to my list of opinions.
I know you strictly focus on America, but you can at least look at Palestine and see what's happened over there and think it's like sick and wrong.
The war and turmoil and everything like it's terrible, right? I obviously I focus on my own people, but just like abortion, I focus on babies that are killed of my people because I think that's my primary interest. But do I think it's good when it happens to other people? No, absolutely not. I want to primarily defend my own people from being destroyed, dissolved, and bombed into submission. Does that mean that I think it's okay when that happens to other people, even if they are foreigners, even if they may not like me? Yes, because I do think most people around the whole world, I know this might be a controversial opinion, are innocent and just trying to get by. Wherever you go, the whole planet wide, most people are just normal and trying to do their day-to-day life. So yeah, whenever there's like cities destroyed and things like that, of course it's bad. Of course we should try to live in a world where that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I'm glad you at least have empathy. I've talked to some people who have like zero empathy. It's like, okay, you got to have a little empathy. And I am someone that have traveled over the world, and I agree most people are good. But a lot of these places get to keep their own culture. It didn't really hit me, I think, till talking to you and David, that our own cultures have we're not allowed to keep it. Why are the other places allowed to keep their cultures, but we're not?
Yeah. And part of keeping my own culture is that I'm not going to start, wearing a keffiyeh and waving a Palestinian flag around, because I've got my own symbols and, my own American garb, or Patriot Front garb, as one of the articles put it.
No, exactly.
But does that mean that I lack fundamental human empathy or the concepts of dignity? No, I don't.
All right, let's hit about two more of these. My question is, the left calls Patriot Front white supremacist, the right calls Patriot Front feds. The group has clearly been identified as a threat to the narrative of both self-serving political sides. What is it, in your opinion, that has both sides terrified of your message, especially when the right shared the same concerns with immigration and what they call the greatest replacement theory just a couple of years ago?
I think one of the biggest things is the example we set, that they don't want us to be normalized. I think that's the biggest thing. Because if Patriot Front, and moreover what we believe, is an accepted part of the political process and landscape, then it opens the door. And I think both sides know that our type of nationalism is actually very popular. There's millions of people that think like we do. And if we had institutions, if we had a say, if these types of things weren't gate-kept, then it would be formidable, and a lot of them would lose their jobs, frankly. And some of the worst of them would probably face some kind of criminal prosecution for the crimes made against humanity and the nation in particular. For the conservatives, I think there is a definite act of self-preservation. The conservatives, they lack faith and ambition. They lack kind of a courageous spirit. I feel like conservatives are just very happy to sit down and proclaim that, oh, well, my ideas are just about, I want everybody to spend as little effort as possible and be maximally comfortable, and I'm just going to gawk at anybody who goes out there for a purposefully strenuous life, and that's incorrect for many reasons. And the liberals just see it as they know that the world they're trying to create doesn't have us in it, and the world we're trying to create does. That's why liberals don't like us.
Yeah, you think white men should exist?
I know.
You used to be able to ride in a train with a black woman.
I know. And also, we have an incompatible interpretation of American history than them. And they want to pervert and manipulate and lie about our history and our legacy and the point of our nation and our nationality, if they even believe we should have one at all, and we don't. So that's why they hate us. They hate us because the world we're building doesn't have them at the top, and they don't like that.
Yes, sounds right. I know Thomas has mentioned that he knows nationalists globally, including Canada. Is there any legitimate organization in Canada he's aware of? I think I know one, but I'll let you go first.
Yes. So actually, recently at the one of our American Muscle fight tournaments, which was unfortunate that you couldn't make it to, I believe you were invited. But
I skipped it. But make sure to invite me next time.
Okay. The Second Sons is a group in Canada, and they sent representatives to meet with us. I was thoroughly impressed by all of them. I think they're good men. I think they have a good and reasonable organization. I think they do good things. Everybody I met was very professional, very good exemplars of their national language. I think Canada should be an independent country. I'm not one of those Americans who doesn't think that. I don't think Canada should be the 51st state. I think they have a proud and unique national heritage, and I want them to fight to preserve that. So that's what I would say.
I know there's a guy, Jeremy McKenzie. I don't know if that's his organization or not. It might be a separate organization.
Yes, I believe it is. And of course, if somebody is Canadian, I do encourage them, do your own research, find things, be informed, don't take my opinion for granted, get familiar and be the best you can. But as far as organizations, that's the one I would tell you to look into first, second, last, all the way.
Yeah, and I just know Canada, apparently, I used to go up there a lot for fighting, but I guess in the last decade, they just completely flooded it with Indians, an insane amount.
It's bad. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a much smaller country. Canada's a huge country geographically, but very small comparatively population-wise. So it's so much easier to totally destroy the demographics.
Yeah.
There's enough Indians to make white people a minority in a lot of countries. I'm not sure if you know that.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. It's got a couple more super chats. I was about to wrap. This one's actually pretty good. I checked membership requirements a while back, and the cutoff was something like 25 or 30. How about starting a Patriot organization for older people?
Yeah. So he probably saw that the application goes 18 to 35, and then there's an over 35, and then there's an over 55 section. You can select any of those and still be accepted as a member.
Okay.
It just changes circumstance. The general idea I like to have is 18 to 35, and mainly we're looking for the baseline membership expectations. You need to be ideologically cohesive, you need to have the right work ethic, so on and so forth. If you're over 35, I'm going to expect all of that, plus you need to have your life together. It's going to make an impact. If you're over 35, and maybe you don't have a job. Now, an 18-year-old can apply and not have a good job, maybe not have a car, obviously not be married, and like that, that's fine. If you're over 35, that might count against you, those things. And if you're over 55, that's obvious an expectation. If you're over 55 and you don't have I mean, no offense, I know things are difficult, but if you're over 55 and you want to be a member, you have to not only have all of the aforementioned, but you need to have property, family, accomplishments, and all these social, and you also have to be much more fit than most of the people in your age range. And then you need to be able to give something back. Maybe you're a business owner and you can employ people, or you have property and you can, host events or things like that. Or if you have unique skills and you can teach people with workshops how to do, old-fashioned things since you're old.
Yeah, we're not judged the same as we age. Some other days having conversations like, oh yeah, women love older men. It's like, if you're rich, got your shit together, you can be broke when you're 25, doesn't make a difference. But if you're broke 45, let's see you two go and getting those girls in their 20s. You're living in a different reality. Okay, I just got a couple more super chats came through. So I guess we'll wrap in these. Win answer, Thomas, on the World Cup question. You blew my mind with the out of the box. Mutual brother victory stance. Thanks for coming on the show with Jake.
There you go. I hope all the white people have fun.
Yes. Looking back with the Civil War, the official death of the American experiment, what if Lincoln had allowed the southern states to leave rather than declaring war on them?
Okay. So this is a complicated hypothetical, and it's good that I have time. But that would be very unreasonable, I think, because no country. Now you can say, oh, that might have been the utopian thing. No country has ever allowed half of their country just to immediately. I mean, maybe in the aftermath of the Soviet Union, that was never going to happen. If Lincoln tried to, first of all, Lincoln was not actually formally in office when secession started. He had yet to actually be inaugurated. So, and cannons were already fired, and you would have had to have the U.S. military, the Union military, at Fort Sumter just decide not to fight back when they were being bombed. Too much had already. It was kind of like the American Revolution in a lot of ways, where by the time the Declaration of Independence was declared, bullets were already flying, or musket balls, right? Like armies and militias were already, things were already in motion that couldn't be stopped by the time the Declaration, they tried to do the Olive Branch petition, and then King George sent them a letter back saying, I'm going to hang all of you, which really didn't win him any favors. But, with the Civil War, it was kind of like that. By the time Lincoln was actually, inaugurated as president, things had gone past the point of peaceful resolution, which is terrible to say. I think the Civil War is one of the great tragedies in American history, if not the greatest. But if it had happened, I do think, the Confederacy, they would have run into the same issues with a Confederate style of government as the Articles of Confederation in the early American history with the 13 colonies, and they would have had to end up either, they would have had to pick a path. And it would have been a more union, which is what the entire country picked early on, or they could have gotten split apart by foreign powers. Other states could have imported way more black people. One of the first things the Continental Congress did, which is one of the first things in the Constitution, is, hey, we're going to stop importing black people as soon as we can. Fun fact, that's in there. And I think it was very early 1800s that they did, and it was the southern states who protested and say, hey, let us import black people from Africa as long as we can. And they might have overturned that, and then parts of the South already have the demographics of Haiti, but more of it could. And I think, I don't know what an independent Confederacy would have looked like. It could have gone a lot of ways, but I do think, I am glad that the country stayed together. I think it's terrible that it was split apart. I think Lincoln's assassination was one of the great tragedies of American history, because Lincoln would have been much softer and kinder with Reconstruction, which I think was warranted. If you are a Southerner and you like the South, and even if you believe in the Southern cause, then you should be upset that Lincoln was killed, because it led to more bloodshed, more radicalization, deeper divisions. That's my answer. So it was never.
There was lots of Jewish influence in the South, by the way, too, for the Confederacy.
Yeah, there were Jews on both sides. I think, Yeah. Anyways, there,
but I think it was Ulysses Grant. Didn't he try expelling the Jews, and Lincoln made him put them back in?
In parts, and I think in his military district in Tennessee, he did, because they were running rampant profiteering and price gouging and doing other things that Jews are known to do.
Speculating in cotton, I think, and some kind of shady manipulation of the market. It's just shocking.
that decision was quickly overturned by Congress or something when they said that you're not actually allowed to do that, which but still he did it, so that's a fun fact. Ulysses S. Grant also said in his memoirs that he considered making a state out of one of the Caribbean islands, I think Santo Domingo, which is currently the Dominican Republic. He thought about conquering one of those islands and making it into a new state and sending all the black people there so they can have their own government. Fun fact, even Ulysses S. Grant thought that.
That would be like Haiti. Dominican Republic would just like Haiti.
It would be great. No. It would be great. It would be perfect. Palm trees, beaches, coconuts. It'd be great.
Would have been like was it Wakanda? Was that movie?
Yes.
Wakanda.
Yes.
I never watched it, but it looked pretty nice. Okay, the view of Democratic socialists winning elections. They are better on the Israel issue, but anti-whites. What do you think?
I believe somebody has to agree with me for the right reasons. If somebody out there doesn't like Israel, that's good, and you could settle for that, but why don't they like Israel? A lot of those people don't like Israel because they think Jews, Israelis are white, and they hate white people, and they hate Western civilization, and they think that Israel is a part of Western civilization, and they probably have similar views to Israelis in Israel as they do white people in America. They want to remove, they believe the same things. So no, somebody who opposes Israel for reasons of they want, global brown race communism, that's not enough for me because I oppose Israel because I pursue my own interest, my own national interest. That's why you should oppose Israel. Somebody has to agree with me for the right reasons, because that is the reason. The reason is the reason, right? Because me placing my people as the moral center of my ideology is actually the whole point. These specific opinions that you have on other countries or current events, those are just outgrowths of it. The reason that I believe these things is the reason. That's actually the whole point. So if you take that away, that I don't count their anti-Israel stuff as a personal benefit to me, because again, not for the right reason. What else do they have to offer? Now, I can be more nuanced on opinions about the economy. I am not one of these people who's a libertarian when it comes to government spending. I do think you need a government with the power to act. I do understand that a lot of these, government programs, have the socialist lack of good management. California spent hundreds of billions of dollars on a rail network to nowhere.
That never got built. That's billions on homeless that gets worse.
Exactly. So there's obviously a bad side of these things, and I think if you have socialism, you can't really do it with the idea that the whole world gets a cash in on it, because the people that are actually a net tax positive, which you need for socialism to work, you're trying to kill them all, right? So if you have socialism, it can't be. If you want it to be functional, it can't be open to the whole world.
Well, yeah, that's just in pot. Like even Bernie Sanders used to be like, for strange. You can't have open borders in any kind of socialism. Like I'm not against helping my people if it's like your people, but if you're helping people that aren't adding to the system, like it's got to be like, for a system to work, the majority of people have to be adding, trying to benefit. Maybe occasionally someone gets hurt, something bad happens.
But there has to be a homogeneity of sacrifice. There has to be an idea of, I'm going to give up some of my paycheck, right? I'm going to give up some of my wealth for the greater good. And that greater good has to be, you have to feel something about the whole country. And if your socialist utopia includes every nationality and every religious group, but the problem is these modern day socialist things is all just okay. Well, I'm going to take white guys' stuff, and I'm going to get the government to take white guys' stuff and give that to me, so I can build my Islamic compounds, so I can implement Sharia law, so I can have my Jewish neighborhoods, so I can have lobby for more protections, and I can be an Indian, and the Indians can take over these industries, and the Koreans can take over these industries, and all this other stuff. It's just the socialism is actually just them all running for pieces of the pie.
Exactly.
But once you run out of white people, once you run out of their money, then what, right? But you have to have a mutual understanding of if for socialism to work, there has to be an idea of I'm giving something up for people that I care about in an aggregate quality. And you need to have a homogeneous country in order to do that. And even then, there's a lot of other specifics that you need to avoid. But yeah, that's what I would say. So am I a fan of the Democratic Socialists of America? No.
But yeah, it definitely can't work like you said if it's designed different for different people, and that's how it is. They'll give money for like trans kids and black people, but it's not to like help a white person get a home. It's designed to not help us, and unfortunately, that's where it's gone. But I think we covered a lot. Any last things? I'm trying to think of any last questions. Anything you want to hit? Like I said, What was the website again where people can find you?
patriotfront.us. We have been getting a mountain of applications recently. I do encourage anybody who is interested to reach out. Again, do your research. Make up your own mind. Don't just believe me, here talking to you on the podcast. Also believe what I say on the website.
Yeah. Don't apply without reading the fucking website. Like you said, that's so annoying.
It'll help you out as well.
See what the organization stands for.
Yes, and
Don't just
I'm
go
really
on the
happy that,
side.
yeah, I'm happy that you had me on again. It's been an absolute pleasure. I do appreciate a lot of the questions. I love going over this stuff, and it's just another day in the cause. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want you on Alex Jones since he keeps calling you a Fed. He promised me a year ago that he was going to have you on, then he never returned my call.
I would like to have a civil discussion with Mr. Jones. He said a lot of things which I think are very much not true, and Alex Jones, having the life he's led, he should know a thing or two about accusations of libel and slander, But I'm a very civil man. I'm happy to to meet and be civil and have a reasonable discussion about the facts and our opinions when we can't find facts. And I hope that's what the case, and we'll see. Anything can happen. I believe in diplomacy. I believe in civil conversation and free speech. So we'll have to see.
Last time I was on there, he tried to convince me you were a Fed and Hitler was a Jew.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one of those is further from the truth, but it's a good
I don't think either of those are true personally, but hey.
Well, to each their own. But anyways, it's been great. I've really enjoyed the discussion.
Thanks a lot, and we'll stay in touch. And if you guys want to help support the podcast anyway, fightbackpodcast.com. You got your Patriot Fund, and we'll be talking soon. I'll come out to one of your events or hopefully do something soon. Have a good one.
Nice having you. We're still live.